Chapter 200. Ha! As the two voices overlapped, two figures threw themselves at Noah like a gust of wind. Noah's body didn't move at all. The wind blew on his face and his bangs swayed, revealing his deep and bright dark eyes. Bang! As soon as he shouted, a gust of wind rose. Ninefold Toru and Yuta Tokusaki, who were charging at Noah with a ferocious momentum, suddenly stomped on the ground. One dodged to the left, the other dodged to the right, and the other rushed to the left. Then, they turned in a half-arc and attacked Noah's side. Noah's eyes flashed. In the next moment, his body took a big step back without warning. Whoosh! Just as Noah's body took a step back, a palm wrapped in strong wind brushed past him and fell on his previous position. Ha! From the cold roar, Noah recognized Kukui's voice. In the next moment, Kukui, who had just hit Noah with his palm, arrived in front of Noah. He quickly took two strange steps and his body turned into a gust of wind, rushing towards Noah again. Dah! Facing Oki, who was pouncing on him, Noah merely smiled. As his feet landed on the ground, a crisp sound rang out from the soles of his feet. With a push, Noah's body was directly pushed out, dodging Oki, who was pouncing on him like a real tiger. Don't forget about me. Just as Noah's body steadied, a loud roar came from behind him. With the sound of wind, it rushed towards Noah's direction. Noah's expression didn't change. His right foot touched the ground lightly again and his toes quickly slid along the road. He narrowly dodged the punch coming from behind. The attacker was Ninefold Toru. Together with Akari Tokusaki, Ninefold Toru and Akari Tokusaki were able to display a decent level of teamwork. Sometimes, they would take the front and the back, sometimes, they would take the left and the right. Sometimes, they would charge at the same time, and sometimes, they would pass each other. Looking at the tacit cooperation between Kujuturu and Owe Hokusaki, these two were obviously not like Noah, Ivanli, and Julie. They only met yesterday when they entered the school. Therefore, Noah felt that Ninefold Toru and Kukui must have known each other for a long time before they entered the school. Moreover, they were obviously trained together and even had the same style. Then, there was only one answer. Not only did Ninefold Toru and Kukui know each other before they entered the school, but it was very likely that they practiced martial arts together. In this way, the problem of Ninefold Toru and Kukui having the same style and skill was solved. If it was someone else, even if they could deal with the pincer attack of these two people, it would be extremely difficult. Unfortunately, Ninefold Toru and Kukui's opponent was Noah. Even if Noah, Kyuhei Totoro, and Kukui Totoro all had the same degree of body strengthening, and Noah deliberately used his ability to limit all aspects of his strength to the level of an ordinary level I, his combat experience and combat skills were not something that Kyuhei Totoro and Kukui Totoro could compare to. What's more, Noah's sensing ability had covered almost all the surrounding areas. As long as there was even the slightest movement, Noah would be able to detect it. Therefore, even if Ninefold Toru and Kukui's coordinated attacks were fierce and had the effect of confusing the opponent, it was still ineffective under Noah's inhuman sensing ability. In other words, Ninefold Toru and Kukui's every move was clearly projected in Noah's mind. In this case, if they wanted to hit Noah, even a level 3 graduate who had trained in this school for 3 years could not do it. Even if Ninefold Toru and Kukui were martial artists, they were still only level I, want to hit Noah. Easier said than done. This guy is really strong. After several consecutive coordinated attacks, Noah managed to escape danger by a hair's breadth. Ninefold Toru's face gradually became dignified. He clenched his teeth and his speed increased a lot. With a shio sound, he turned into an afterimage and shot straight at Noah. Who? However, Noah once again dodged Ninefold Toru's attack with a strange arc that ordinary people would not be able to predict. Here. Kukui also overdrew his physical strength to increase his speed. He lowered his body and suddenly pounced. In the end, he still pounced on empty air. On the forest road that was full of trees, the confrontation was getting more and more intense. Ninefold Tuyu and Kukui's speed had increased to the point that every time they moved, there would be a gust of wind. People with poor eyesight would not be able to follow their movements. However, even so, the young man in the gymnastic suit still had a calm smile in his eyes. Occasionally, he would take a step forward, move back, tilt to the side, and rotate. Every time he moved, he would be able to dodge the attacks of the ninefold Toru and Tokasaki Kue. Over time, Kuju Tuyu and Yuchokasaki discovered a fact with some fear. From the beginning of the confrontation to now, Noah had not moved more than 1 meter from his original position. "You bastard!" Suddenly, Kukui's face turned blue. With a bang, he fiercely stomped on the ground, causing a cloud of dust to rise. Like a whirlwind, he glided around Noah in an arc like lightning and rushed toward Noah, who was in the center. If one were to look down from above, it would seem like Kue Tokasaki was sprinting in a circle with Noah as the center. The speed of his sprint brought up a cloud of smoke and dust, like volcanic ash erupting from an erupting volcano, surrounding Noah in the middle. As for Kukui himself, when the dust was enough to cover Noah's entire field of vision, he swooped down, clenched his hand into a fist, and punched the black shadow in the center, which was covered by the dust. "You actually came up with such a trick. You're quite capable." Noah's surprised voice reverberated in the cloud of dust and entered Akui Tokasaki's ears. "Unfortunately, it doesn't work on me." After saying that, Kukui, who was rushing toward the black shadow in the center, intended to give his opponent a full blow, saw it. Puchi! As if something was broken, in a tearing sound, a hand flashed out from the black shadow covered by the dust like a ghost and turned into a palm. It brushed past Kukui's fist and gently pressed on Kukui's chest like a leaf floating slowly. Dong! Undoubtedly, the palm seemed to be very light, but the moment it fell on Kukui's body, a dull explosion was heard, as if it came from Kukui's body. Guha! At the same time, Kukui felt an indescribable force hit his chest, causing him to groan. His body flew backward as if he had been hit by a truck. However, Kukui, who was hit by Noah, showed a triumphant smile. Whoosh! Immediately, another figure appeared from the opposite direction. It seemed that it had discussed with Kukui, who had just been sent flying out of the smoke, and it went into the smoke. In a flash, it appeared in front of Noah. "It's over." In a violent roar, Ninefold Totoro raised his head, revealing a determined face. Like a longbow that had been pulled to its limit, he pulled a fist behind his back. Then, a scene that surprised Noah appeared. Buzz! He pulled the 9-layer penetrations behind him like a bow that was pulled to its limit. Specks of light flickered around his fist and converged on the 9-layer penetrations. Finally, they condensed into a golden vortex. Hiya! In an instant, Ninefold Torrent let out a loud roar. His fist, which was condensed with a golden vortex, was like a shooting star that disappeared in a flash. Amidst a dull explosion, it landed heavily on Noah's body, who had a surprised expression on his face. In the area shrouded in smoke and dust, a brilliant golden light flashed. Bang! Amidst the sound of the explosion, a storm-like impact wind swept out from the smoke and dust, blowing away all the smoke and dust that shrouded the area. However, it brought along an even denser and more violent smoke and dust, which mixed with the randomly spreading airflow, blew in all directions. Dong! The ground suddenly shook, as if it had been hit by a meteorite. Gravel flew into the sky. Chapter 201. Boom! It was as if a missile had hit the ground. In the midst of the explosion, a violent gust of wind brought countless gravel and dust into the air. The ground trembled slightly, and the surrounding trees seemed to have encountered a storm. The treetops shook violently, and leaves were blown away from the trees as if they were worthless. Along with the expanding gust of wind, the leaves were blown away in all directions. The gravel was falling from the sky. Not far away, Kauai could only raise his arms to block in front of his body. His body was hit by the gravel of various sizes, and his body was also covered in dust due to the gust of wind. After a long time, Akui Tokusaki slowly lowered the arm in front of his face. He struggled to raise his head with his glasses and looked in front of him. At the spot where Noah was supposed to be standing, a hole with a diameter of at least 4 to 5 meters had replaced the original intact ground. Gravel kept rolling down from the inside of the hole. Ninefold Totoro was standing in the center of the hole, kneeling on one knee. One of his fists was still on the ground, which proved that he was the one who launched the attack. Kauai covered his chest and stood up from the ground. He looked in the direction of Ninefold Totoro with cold sweat dripping down his face. There was a hint of shock in his eyes. That guy, when did he learn this move? Ugh! Ninefold Totoro, who was in the center of the hole, raised his hand that was dripping with blood due to the cracked skin. His other hand was tightly hugging it, and a trace of pain appeared on his face. Sure enough, even if I've become a surpasser, the burden of this move is still very heavy. Kauai, who was immersed in the power of Ninefold Totoro's inexplicable attack, quickly realized that something was wrong and woke up with a start. That's not right. Where's that guy? Ninefold Totoro, who was hugging his arm with a painful expression, narrowed his eyes and was shocked. Although the power of this attack was indeed extraordinary, even if it was extremely powerful, this attack was still not enough to shatter a person's body into pieces. Not even a corpse could be seen. Then, where did Noah go? This answer was quickly answered. Not bad. As this voice sounded, Kuju Totoro and Kwai Totoro raised their heads and looked in the direction of the voice. It was a sound that had not yet dissipated from the edge of the deep crater that had been created by his fist in front of the 9-layer penetrations. Not long after, the smoke and dust slowly dissipated. Noah, who was a little dirty, appeared in front of Totoro Yujua and Akui Totoro. His figure looked very haggard, but there were almost no injuries on his body. Looking at Noah's position, how could Totoro and Totoro not know what had happened? Under the protection of Yujii Hokusaki, the sure-kill punch of Ninefold Torrent missed. In other words, at the critical moment, Noah dodged Ninefold Totoro's sure-kill attack. By opening and closing your body to the limit and concentrating all your strength on one point in your fist, using the fastest speed and the shortest path to throw this punch, at the moment when the punch hits the limit of the distance that the fist can reach, all the strength gathered in the fist will be released in an explosive manner. The real purpose of this attack should be to create a shockwave, not to throw out your full-strength punch. That's why the power is so great. Under the gaze of Kuju Totoro and Yuta Totoro in disbelief, Noah patted his dirty clothes and looked at Kuju Totoro with a smile. Am I right? You dodged it? Kuju Totoro opened his mouth and finally revealed a bitter smile. Not only did you dodge it, but you also saw through the true purpose of my attack. Who are you? The principle behind your attack isn't very difficult. It's just like how people who practice swordsmanship all year round can unleash sword waves and slash through the air when they reach the pinnacle. Similarly, punches can also unleash shock waves. It's just that your attack has strengthened this feature to the limit. Noah lowered his head and looked at his hand. If it's a person who has trained his body and skills to the extreme, saying this, Noah fiercely clenched his fist. Like a longbow that was pulled to the limit, he instantly pulled his clenched fist behind his back. Whing! The power condensed from the fist shook the atmosphere and rolled up a small impact. The small impact turned into solid light spots and gathered on Noah's fist. Originally, at this point, As long as the power was perfectly controlled and the fist was thrown in the shortest path and the fastest speed, the small impact and huge force gathered on the fist would hit the space in front of the fist, causing a bigger impact and forming a real shockwave that spread out. In this way, the sure kill punch of Kuju Totoro would be perfectly reproduced. Unfortunately, Noah could not reproduce the sure kill punch of Kuju Totoro. Bang! In the next moment, the condensed impact on Noah's fist and the condensed power on the fist suddenly lost balance, causing the small impact of the light spots on Noah's fist to dissipate with a muffled sound. Sure enough, even if I know the principle and how to use it, I can't use this move if I don't find the specific way to control the power. Noah frowned and clenched his fist, but his expression soon relaxed. It seems that I still need to practice for a period of time before I can use this move. Noah, who was saying this, did not see that the expression of Kuju Totoro had changed from disbelief to disbelief, and was quickly replaced by complete shock. In order to learn this move, Kuju Totoro had spent almost 2 years before he finally mastered it completely. And now, Noah had only seen it once, and after deducing the principle and method of using it, he had almost succeeded. The only difference was that he had not practiced it and did not know when to control the power to what extent. What a terrifying person. Kuju Totoro took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in his heart. He hugged his arms, stood up, looked at Noah, and sighed. This move is quite a burden on the body, especially the arm. Even now that I've become a surpasser, I feel that using it twice is the limit. If you use it a third time, I'm afraid that your body will become immobile. If you want to practice this move, it's best to allocate the number of practice times and practice time. Otherwise, your body will definitely collapse. You have to be careful. Hearing this, Noah was slightly startled, and then laughed. I secretly learned your move, and you're giving me advice. Aren't you too nice? Really, what the hell are you doing? Kuju Totoro, who came to Kuju Totoro's side, also complained. This guy is now an enemy. Can't you give advice after class? Hearing this, Noah was happy again. Didn't that mean that he gave advice without objection? Although their personalities were different, Kuju Totoro and Kuju Totoro were unexpectedly good people. Do you guys still want to fight? Noah, who had a good impression of Kuju Totoro and Kuju Totoro, did not pursue the victory. Instead, he shrugged at them. I think that at this time, the winner has already been decided, and the right choice is to continue running. Otherwise, if your injuries are really serious, you won't be able to complete the task of running 10 laps. You bastard, are you trying to make us surrender? Kuju Totoro roared with a fierce face. I won't let you win that easily. Well, little tiger, I think that Noah is right. Kuju Totoro advised. We still have 10 laps to run. If we continue, not only will we exhaust our energy, but our injuries will also worsen. If that's the case, we won't be able to complete the task. Kuju Totoro's eyes flickered for a moment, as if he had found a way out, and turned his head away. Noah, who saw the interaction between the two of them, laughed involuntarily. He turned around and waved his hand at the two of them. Well then, I'll go first. Let's fight again next time. Without giving them a chance to speak, Noah ran away, leaving Kuju Totoro and Kuju Totoro staring at each other. Kuju Totoro raised the fist that he had just thrown out, looked at it, and clenched it tightly. I also need to become stronger. Chapter 202. Ha. 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 Amidst the panting, students arrived at the school gate one after another, wearing tattered or dirty gym clothes. After completing the task of running 10 laps around the school, they fell to the ground, unable to get up. Not long after, Orange Bar, Ivanli, and Julie appeared together. As they ran towards the school gate, they panted heavily. When they reached the finish line, they crouched down and pressed their hands on their knees. Their faces were pale as they panted. One lap around the school was about 4 kilometers long. 10 laps would be 40 kilometers. If it wasn't for the strengthening effect of the daybreak star rune, with a girl's physical strength, she would have probably fainted long ago. On the other hand, Orange Bar, Ivanli, and Julie were still able to hold on without collapsing. Compared to the boys around them who had collapsed, they were in a much better state. Just as Orange Bar, Ivanli, and Julie were about to catch their breaths, a can of beverage appeared in front of Ivanli and Julie at the same time and entered their eyes. "Thank you for your hard work, Ivanli, Julie." Noah placed the drinks in front of the two girls and opened the bottle. He tried his best to soften his tone as he spoke slowly. "Come on, drink them." Noah. Ivan only had time to confirm who it was before his hand involuntarily reached for the drink in front of him and drank it. "Thank you very much." Julie's little face was flushed from the strenuous exercise. While the bell on her head was ringing, she first thanked Noah, then took the drink and drank it sip by sip. "Orange, this is yours." After Ivan and Julie finished their drinks, Noah handed another can to Orange Bar. "You should drink it too." "Thank you." Orange Bar was startled. He didn't expect himself to have one. After he recovered, he smiled gratefully and took the drink. The three girls drank their drinks hurriedly. Their gym clothes were soaked in sweat and stuck tightly to their bodies. Each of them had their own merits. After a while, Ivanli breathed out heavily without caring about his image. "I'm finally alive. I thought I was dead for sure." Hey, are you okay?" Noah shook his head with a smile. "Pull yourself together. There are still 3 years to go. If you're like this on the first day, how are you going to survive the rest?" Speaking of this, Noah looked at Julie, who was still slightly out of breath. "By the way, how did the 3 of you end up together?" If they saw others while running, they could attack them. This was an additional rule for this long-distance race. However, Orange Bar, Ivan, and Julie ran back to the finish line together. Clearly, although they had met each other, they did not fight. "This was Ivanli's idea," Julie answered honestly. "The 3 of us formed an alliance to deal with others and complete the 10 laps mission. After all, us girls are different from you guys. In terms of pure physical strength, we're definitely weaker." Orange Bar nodded in response to Noah's question. "So, in order to avoid wasting unnecessary energy and time, we ran back together when we met Ivanli and Julie." Noah was relieved. Even if Ivanli had learned the way of the sword and Orange Bar was a master of the 18 arts of Orange Flow, they were still inferior to the boys in terms of pure physical strength. As for Julie, Noah hadn't seen her true strength. But thinking about it, her petite body couldn't have stored much physical strength. Of course, even though that was the case, other than the boys, Juba, Ivanli, and Julie were the first girls to reach the finish line and complete 10 laps. Even if the boys were included, the 3 of them were still in the top 10. This was already considered very fast and had good stamina. "After this long run, I finally know how powerful the Daybreak Star tattoo is," Ivanli said with a complicated expression as she stroked her breasts, or more accurately, her breasts, which were bulging under her gym clothes. "We actually managed to run 40 kilometers. It's a bit unbelievable." 40 kilometers was already considered a marathon. For a group of girls who only went to a normal junior high school and didn't specially train their bodies and only practice martial arts, it was really unbelievable that they could complete such a mission. Moreover, not only was there a problem with the height of the road outside the school, but because it was an artificial island facing the sea, the wind was especially strong. Running in such an environment was no different from running on a steep slope with a grade 4 or 5 wind. It was quite tiring. However, the group of students managed to finish running such a route within 2 hours. This was already close to the world record for a marathon, right? It was natural for Ivanli to have such thoughts. Right, Noah. Ivanli suddenly said to Noah. How many times did you complete the task of 10 laps and reach the finish line? Orange Bar and Julie immediately turned their heads and looked at Noah. Me? Noah scratched his cheek. Well, maybe it's because not many people wanted to fight with me, but I was the first to successfully finish the race. The first one. Orange Bar choked and followed up with a question. Then when did you finish? Noah said with an innocent face. About an hour ago. Orange Bar and Ivanli were speechless. Even Julie was stunned for a moment before nodding her head. As expected of Noah, he's really strong. It took Orange Bar, Ivanli, and Julie 2 hours to finish the 40 kilometers run. And this was already equivalent to the world record for a marathon. 1 hour. What kind of concept was that? Undoubtedly, it's all stage I. Even if your stamina was originally much stronger than ours, after the enhancement, the gap shouldn't have widened so much, right? Orange Bar could only say this with a speechless expression. Could it be that other than your outstanding martial arts, you also have amazing stamina? My stamina isn't too far off from the average guy. After the enhancement of the Daybreak Star rune, it's not much different from the guys in class. Noah smiled meaningfully. And there's a trick for me to be able to reach this stage. Trick. Orange Bar, Ivanli, and Julie's ears twitched at the same time. Ivanli couldn't help but ask. What trick? It's the trick to increase stamina and stamina's recovery speed, extending stamina usage time, and indirectly extending stamina training and increasing stamina's duration and extent. Noah said calmly. It's with this trick that the stamina consumption and recovery are basically equal. So, I basically finished the 40 kilometers without any loss. When I came back, I didn't even pant. So powerful. Ivanli was startled and quickly asked. Then what's the trick? You want to know? Noah shrugged. Today's long-distance running class is already over, so I'll tell you next time. After saying that, Noah turned his gaze to the running track that they had been running on until an hour ago. From afar, Noah could almost see a few people running in this direction with flushed faces and thick necks. Behind them, there should be quite a few people still working hard. Suddenly, Noah muttered to himself for a while and looked at Orange Bar. Where's Sui Gao? I don't know either. Orange Bar shook his head and also looked in the direction of the running track. We saw ya on the way here. We wanted to run back with her, but you complained that we were running too slowly and insisted that we run back first. That child has a more delicate personality, so to not let her be a burden to us, we ran first. Noah nodded and agreed with Orange Bar's actions. With Sui Gao's delicate personality, if Orange Bar was really with her and looked after her, it might really make her feel guilty that she was dragging them down. Therefore, Orange Bar's actions were not wrong. In the end, when Sui Gao returned, the sky had already started to darken. The moment she reached the finish line, Sui Gao fainted due to fatigue. That night, it was said that Sui Gao had been hiding in her room and didn't come out for dinner. Then, the next day, in class, 2 students applied to withdraw from school, removed the Daybreak Star pattern, and returned to their previous world. Chapter 203. In the cold forest, in an open space, Noah stood in the middle, as if he had entered a meditative state, letting the cold wind blow on his body without moving. On the side, Ivan and Julie were also present, as if they were afraid of disturbing Noah. They subconsciously held their breath and quietly stayed there. Ho! The wind mixed with the falling leaves, drifting through the open space that was not large. At this moment, Noah took a deep breath and tightened his body. Raising his hand, clenching his fist, like a longbow, Noah pulled his clenched fist behind him, and the power of every part of his body rushed to that arm and gathered on his fist. Whang! The next moment, the space around the fish shook slightly, and the gorgeous light spots also appeared in the vibrating space. Like bees returning to their nest, they condensed on Noah's fist. In less than a second, the gorgeous light spots that converged on Noah's fist all merged together, turning into a golden vortex, covering Noah's fist. At this time, if someone carefully observed the arm that Noah pulled behind him, they would definitely notice. The muscles on that arm were trembling at a very small frequency. Then, Noah opened his eyes abruptly. Ho! With a cold bellow, Noah's fist seemed to have turned into a shooting star that disappeared in a flash as it swung forward abruptly. Dong! The vortex that converged on Noah's fist suddenly exploded, stirring up a violent airflow, forming a terrifying shockwave, rubbing against the atmosphere, and in the sharp sound of the atmosphere, like a beam of light, violently shot out. The shockwave that turned into a beam of light cut through the space, and heavily fell on a tree in front of him. Bang! The true sound of an explosion resounded. That was the sound of the fragile tree exploding under the impact of the violent shockwave, turning into pieces of wood and broken tree bodies. And in such a situation, the shockwave that directly blasted a large scale of trees into pieces did not reduce in power, and hit trees again and again. Bang! 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 So, in a very rhythmic explosion, the trees and the impact path of the light beam like shockwave were blasted one after another, turning into broken wood and tree bodies, flying everywhere. It was not until a long time later that everything calmed down. No. It can't be said that everything calmed down. Under the bombardment of the shockwave, the trees that turned into broken wood and broken tree bodies fell to the ground in a burst of crackling sounds, and the ground where the shockwave passed also trembled, and the gravel flew everywhere, scattering in all directions. And when everything really calmed down, the people present could only see that in front of Noah, who maintained the posture of punching out, there was a huge gully with a diameter of 2 meters and a length of at least 30 meters standing there. Of course, in the range of this gully, the trees and the ground that should have been there all disappeared. Smoke and dust filled the huge gully. Not far away, Ivan and Julie saw this scene. One of them opened his mouth slightly due to shock, while the other's eyes lit up, and her crimson eyes became extremely lively. Phew! Noah exhaled, retracted his fist, and looked at the hand that just swung out a terrifying blow, and opened and closed his palm. After feeling the pain on it, he sighed. It seems that even after being improved, this move, annihilation blow, still has a burden on the body. Annihilation blow. That was the name that Noah gave to the sure kill punch that he comprehended from the 9-layer penetrations. Of course, it was different from the move he comprehended from the 9-layer penetrations. In order to minimize the burden on the body, or even completely eliminate it, Noah slightly improved the sure kill punch that he comprehended from the 9-layer penetrations. Then, the result of the improvement was the move that Noah named Annihilation Blow. However, although it was said to be an improvement, Noah only added a few things to the move that he comprehended from the 9-layer penetrations. In the process of punching out, he controlled the muscles of the arm that punched out, and made the muscles of the arm vibrate. Noah added this step to make this move called Annihilation Blow take shape. The reason why the sure kill punch of the 9-layer penetrations had such a large burden on the body was mainly because the power of this move was too great, and the reaction force of the punch would also act on the user's body, making the user's body bear the burden. And if Noah added this step, in the process of punching out, the huge reaction force would be removed little by little along with the vibration of the arm muscles. In the end, the reaction force acting on the user's body would be reduced by a lot. In this way, when the user punched out, he would be able to use his full strength without restraint, and a part of the reaction force that was removed would also rebound, increasing the power of the annihilation blow. Therefore, Noah's annihilation blow not only could be used more than the unimproved version of the 9-layer penetrations, but its power was also much greater. According to the 9-layer penetrations, his move could only be used twice, and after 3 times, his body would be completely immobilized. Noah's annihilation blow could be used at least 4 times, and after 5 times would be the limit. If he wanted to completely immobilize his body, he would have to use it 7 times. At least, when Noah's body was still at rank I of an ordinary surpasser, it was like this. Seeing Noah retract his fist, Ivan and Julie hurriedly approached him. "This is the move you said a few days ago that you stole from others." Ivan looked at the huge gully, and couldn't help but be speechless. If hit, even a surpasser would be near death, or even instant death, right? Julie pulled Noah's clothes, raised her head, and stared at Noah without blinking. "This move, can you teach me? Julie also wants to learn." Noah paused, and then apologetically patted Julie's head. "Sorry, although annihilation blow was improved by me, it still puts a lot of burden on the body. It's not a good choice to let a girl with a weaker body learn it. Also, Julie is quite petite. I'm afraid that even if you learn it, not only will you not be able to use it successfully, but you will also hurt yourself." Julie's bright eyes suddenly dimmed a bit, and she said with a bit of dejection, "That's a pity. I'm really glad that I didn't become Noah's opponent in the qualification ceremony." Ivan stuck out his tongue. "Okay, it's almost time for class, let's go back." Noah and Julie nodded at the same time. As soon as they entered the classroom, Noah, Ivan, and Julie felt that today's atmosphere was a bit heavier than usual. Noah, Ivan, and Julie understood why the atmosphere became like this, and the 3 of them were silent. Since the start of school, almost 3 days had passed. In these 3 days, basically every day, there would be a group of students who couldn't bear the heavy training and applied to leave the school. In addition, the people who stayed were squeezed out of their energy and stamina due to the heavy training, so it was inevitable that such a heavy atmosphere would appear. From afar, Noah could even see that Sui Gaoya, who fainted during the long-distance running training 3 days ago, was sitting in her seat with her head down, her face full of gloominess and disappointment, making Orange Bar, who was sitting next to her, abnormally worried. In these few days, Sui Gaoya had maintained such a worrisome state. Obviously, these days of training also made this weak girl feel abnormally pressured. Seeing Sui Gaoya like this, Ivan, who was sitting next to Noah, couldn't help but worry. Yeah, there shouldn't be a problem, right? In this regard, Noah could only remain silent. He picked up a list of names that teacher Little Bunny had just sent to him with her overly energetic voice. It was a list of the students who were still in the class. On the list, not only was there a photo of every student in the class, their name, and other basic information, there was also a detailed record of their combat strength. For example, whether they had any experience in martial arts or sports, and information related to Blaze were all recorded on it. It was a list for the students to use as a reference when choosing Tripping Double Blade. Chapter 204. Ivanli, who was also looking at the list, put his head in front of Noah's list and looked at the list with Noah, as if he could see who Noah wanted to choose as the Tripping Double Blade. Right, who are you planning to form the official Tripping Double Blade with? For Ivanli's question, Noah shrugged and didn't answer. In fact, Noah didn't want to form the official Tripping Double Blade at all. He didn't even think about choosing a Tripping Double Blade before the weekend. The reason was very simple, because he didn't know many people. He didn't know if it was because of Noah's extraordinary strength that his classmates had a sense of distance or rejection towards Noah. In the 3 days he stayed in the school, almost no boys talked to Noah. The reason why he used the word almost was because 3 days ago during the long-distance running training, Noah, Kyujituryu, and Kawai Hokusaki had a few words during the battle. After the battle, they would only talk for a short while if there was a chance. According to Noah's knowledge, Kyujituryu and Kawai Hokusaki had decided to form the official Tripping Double Blade. In this way, Noah naturally wouldn't have a satisfactory candidate for the tripping double blade. Therefore, Noah also had a somewhat casual and peaceful attitude. Anyway, until the weekend, the students who hadn't formed the tripping double blade would form the tripping double blade under the school's arrangement. Therefore, Noah didn't need to worry about anything, just let nature take its course. Holding this thought, Noah just glanced at the information of his acquaintances on the list, such as Evanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Swagaya, then threw the list on the table and didn't care about it anymore. Where are Ivan and Julie? Noah placed his hands behind his head and casually asked his two companions on his left and right. You should have decided who to form the tripping double blade with, right? Of course I will form the tripping double blade with Julie. Ivanli said arrogantly. After all, we have lived together for 3 days, I feel that Julie and I get along very well. Ah, Julie nodded her small head gently and said expressionlessly. I like Ivanli, so no problem. I also like Julie. Ivanli responded with a smile. If it wasn't for Noah in the middle, maybe he would have hugged Julie. Hearing the conversation between Ivanli and Julie, Noah also secretly felt relieved. To be honest, the pressure of living in the same room with two girls who were charming in all aspects was not an ordinary kind of pressure. Not to mention that when he first moved in, he accidentally saw Ivanli and Julie's naked bodies. During this period of time, Ivanli and Julie's various private matters were constantly displayed in front of Noah, which made Noah very vexed. For example, Julie liked to wear a white shirt as her pajamas. Every night, she would raise her 2 white thighs in front of Noah. Even if Ivanli tried to stop it, Julie would still ignore it. For Julie, in terms of the matters between men and women, although it wasn't that she didn't know, but basically, as long as he didn't touch or see her naked body, she wouldn't put up any defenses. Ivanli did pay attention to the fact that Noah was in his room, but some things couldn't be avoided. For example, when taking out a change of clothes or drying clothes, it was inevitable that Ivanli's secret clothes would be unintentionally seen by Noah. As a result, Ivanli couldn't hide the style and color of his underwear from Noah, which almost made Ivanli cry. In this kind of life, as a man, he could only endure bitterly, or he could only transform into a wolf. The former would make people mentally tired, to the point that they couldn't live a normal life. Needless to say, the latter would definitely be treated as scum the next day, and would directly be destroyed by society. Noah didn't want to be the latter. Therefore, Noah could only bear the pain of being the former. After the weekend, Ivanli and Julie officially formed a tripping double edge, and Noah could finally live a normal life. How could he not be relieved? At this moment, Ivanli narrowed his eyes and said such a sentence that made Noah jump. Do you feel happy that you don't have to live with us? This sentence made Noah's heart skip a beat. Whoa! Ivanli seemed to be able to see through Noah's inner thoughts, crying out in pain. Although it's not that I can't understand your thoughts, but no matter what, I'm still a girl. Your reaction makes me feel hurt. On the side, Julie turned her head and stared straight at Noah, like an abandoned little animal. Undoubtedly, her face was expressionless, but it gave people a delicate feeling. Noah doesn't want to live with me and Ivanli. Hearing this, Noah bitterly smiled. Does Julie really want me to live with you? What made Noah and Ivanli surprised was that Julie actually nodded without hesitation. Living with Noah, it feels good. Feels good. Noah and Ivanli were stunned at the same time. Ah, Julie said in an extremely flat tone. Because Noah and Ivanli are very gentle, just like Mom and Dad. Dad? Noah covered his face and sighed. Mom. Ivanli's face was also full of confusion. Really, when staying with Julie, Noah and Ivanli were just like Julie's mom and dad, they couldn't help but take care of her. At this time, Teacher Little Rabbit, who had been jumping around in the class, clapped her hands, her unique sweet voice resounding throughout the classroom. Okay. Everyone can think about the tripping double-edge matter in your spare time. Our physical strength enhancement class is about to start again. Everyone gather at the school gate. Let's go. After that, Teacher Little Rabbit took the lead and rushed out of the classroom. A group of students sighed and followed her out. Their whole body was filled with a decadent atmosphere. Noah noticed before he got up. Sui Gaoya, who had been lowering her head, with a depressed expression, for a moment, her face showed an expression that looked like she was about to cry. At the school gate, the students who had changed into their gymnastics clothes once again slowly gathered. Many of the students were whispering to each other, making a conversation that could not be ignored. Is this life going to continue for another 3 years? How are we going to persevere? I'm probably at my limit. Someone will apply to drop out today, right? Ivanli, who was standing beside Noah, heard this conversation, and felt a little uncomfortable. It wasn't easy to become classmates, but in the end, everyone is planning to leave. I feel so lonely. Julie was still expressionless, but the ahog on her head drooped listlessly, showing the depression in her heart. Shortly after, another round of conversations that couldn't be ignored sounded. Suegea probably can't go on anymore, right? When this sentence was said, many people's eyes gathered on Suegaoya. Suegaoya's body trembled. She lowered her head forcefully, almost burying it in her abnormally well-endowed breasts. Many people could clearly see Suegaoya's body trembling. What nonsense are you talking about? Orange Bar angrily shouted at the surrounding students. You will definitely be able to persevere. The surrounding students more or less looked at each other and chose to remain silent. It was obvious that most of them didn't believe Orange Bar's words. Seeing this, Noah narrowed his eyes, looked at Suegaoya who was biting her lips and lowering her head, and secretly sighed in his heart. Although he didn't speak to Suegaoya normally, because Orange Bar often looked for Noah to discuss martial arts and life problems, Suegaoya, who had always been by Orange Bar's side, would often appear around Noah. Therefore, Noah decided to help Suegaoya. Suegaoya. Noah, who wasn't far from Suegaoya, said directly. Later, you'll run however I tell you to. Do you understand? Suegaoya looked up with a stunned expression. Even Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, and the surrounding students showed a surprised expression. Suegaoya, who reacted, was at a loss. That, if you don't know what to say, then don't say anything. Noah gave Suegaoya a smile. Don't worry, I won't harm you. Suegaoya could only stare blankly at Noah, and after a while, she nodded uneasily. Chapter 205. Bang! As the sound of the colored firecrackers rang out, Teacher Little Rabbit was like a running rabbit. As she jumped, she took the finished firecrackers and dodged to the side. Some of the surrounding students chose to dash out and run at the front. Some chose to stay in place and stare in one direction. There, with Noah as the center, Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, and Suegaoya were gathered around him. It was a scene that made the boys envious. What are you guys doing? Noah was speechless. I told Suegaoya to run with me. What are you guys doing here? Yeah, is my tripping double blade. Orange Bar immediately responded. Although I don't know what you want to do to ya, I have to watch you. Are you treating me like an idiot who wants to attack a girl? Noah's mouth twitched. He then looked at Ivanli and Julie. Then, what about you two? I'm also curious about what you want to do to ya. Ivanli answered crisply. So, it's fine if I follow, right? Yeah, Julie nodded. She shook the bell on her hairband and made a ding-ling sound. She looked unusually cute. Suegaoya nervously placed her hands in front of her body, but because her arms were too slender, and the pair of bulges in front of her chest were too large, her arms were directly buried in a certain cleavage, causing the eyes of the surrounding male students to almost pop out of their sockets. "Noah, classmate, what do you want to do to me? You also think I will do something to you?" Noah sighed faintly. "I'm not a dog. I won't bite you." Swaegaya's face was still a little uneasy. She said something that almost made Noah fall. "You really won't bite me?" "Ah. I promise. I definitely won't bite you." Feeling all the strength in his body disappearing, Noah decided to end this quickly. "Swaegaya, you will run with me. Then, follow my instructions and breathe." Breathing. Unsurprisingly, everyone present was startled by this. However, Noah did not even bother to explain himself. Instead, he directly spoke. "All right. Let's go." After saying that, Noah took the lead and started running. Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, and Swaegaya all reacted and quickly ran after him. Noah deliberately slowed down his pace and ran beside Swaegaya. He deliberately didn't look at Swaegaya's bouncing breasts because of the vigorous running. "Swaegao, take a deep breath and hold it in." Oh. Swaegaya replied in a fluster. Just like that, Noah whispered to Swaegaya as he ran forward. He asked Swaegaya to follow his instructions. While running, Swaegaya began to breathe awkwardly. Around them, Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar were like bodyguards, running beside Noah and Swaegaya. They listened to Noah's incomprehensible words as they ran forward. Not long after, the group of 5 disappeared from the running track in front of the school gate. No one noticed that the sweet and cute expression on the face of Teacher Bunny, who was wearing a maid outfit and a pair of bunny ears, slowly disappeared, and was replaced by a sinister smile with some profound meaning. 2 hours later, ha. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar stood side by side at the school gate, their chests rising and falling as they panted heavily. However, their gazes were fixed in front of them, their eyes filled with disbelief. Within the range of the 3 girls' vision, Swaegaya was also panting, but her breathing was much less than Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar's. Compared to the previous time when she fainted immediately after running, she stood there steadily this time. Moreover, it was obvious that she still had a lot of energy left. This caused Swaegaya's eyes to fluctuate violently. She looked at her hands with a face of disbelief. Why? This was also the question in Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar's minds. Undoubtedly, Swaegaya was not good at sports. She had run until the sky turned dark during the previous training and even fainted. However, this time, her condition was much better than Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar's. She was even in the first batch to reach the finish line and complete the mission. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar were not the only ones who were in disbelief. Even Swaegaya herself could not believe that she had done this. She stared at her hands in a daze, unable to recover for a long time. "Thank you for your hard work." Noah appeared in front of the 4 girls at the scene, looking exactly the same as when he set off. He didn't look like he had just finished a 40-kilometer run at all. He opened the bottles of drinks and handed them to the 4 girls. "Drink this first." "Thank you." The 4 girls subconsciously thanked him with stunned expressions. They only came to their senses after receiving the drinks. What the hell is going on? Ivanli was the first to cry out. He approached Noah and stared at Noah closely. "Noah, you did this, didn't you?" "What do you mean by I did this?" Noah said in dissatisfaction. "You're saying it like I did something bad." "I was helping Swaegaya." That's true." Although he said that, Ivan still had a look of disbelief on his face. Noah. Swaegaya clenched her hands tightly in front of her. Although she was fidgeting with her hands nervously, her eyes did not avoid Noah. The gloominess and haze on her face had long disappeared. It was replaced by an anxious expression, as if she had regained hope. Why? Why did I? That's the credit of the breathing technique that I just taught you. Seeing Swaegaya's anxious expression as if she had regained hope, Noah smiled and turned to look at Evanli, Julie, and Orange Bar. Do you still remember the trick I told you about last time? This breathing technique is the trick. Saying that, Noah did not deliberately keep them in suspense and explained. In people's lives, there are actually many examples of using breathing to achieve a certain effect. For example, deep breathing can relieve tension and panic. Pregnant women can also use breathing to achieve the goal of assisting in childbirth. These have some psychological effects, but there is also a practical effect of breathing. In this world, there are some countries where martial arts require the use of breathing. Not only can it achieve twice the results with half the effort, but it can also help in adjusting one's state of mind and body during battle to achieve the goal of prolonging the battle. This kind of specific breathing to achieve a certain goal and help in practicing martial arts and fighting is called breathing, training qi, or spirit cultivation, in China and India. Noah slowly explained. And according to these breathing methods, I have also figured out a breathing technique that can help people quickly recover their strength and increase their endurance. Hearing this, Evanli, Julie, and Orange Bar gradually showed expressions of relief. Swaegaya also looked at Noah with admiration. So it's because I learned Noah classmates' breathing technique that I can keep up with everyone. You're still far from learning it. Noah looked at Swaegaya with a smile that was not a smile. If your breathing was completely in accordance with the breathing technique, with that kind of speed, the recovery and consumption of physical strength should be just right. The result would be that even if you reached the finish line, you should be in a complete state. But you were panting, which proves that your breathing is not completely in accordance with the breathing technique. That. Swaegaya immediately bowed in panic. Really? I'm really sorry. Why are you suddenly apologizing? Noah laughed in spite of himself and scratched his cheek. Remember the breathing technique I just taught you. In the future, no matter what kind of training you participate in, remember to use it. This way, you can keep up with everyone. Swaegaya vigorously nodded her small head. Her face and eyes were filled with extreme joy and moved, almost shedding tears. Relying on this breathing technique, Swaegaya could endure all the training and continue to stay in the school. This made Evanli and Orange Bar somewhat happy as they surrounded Swaegaya. Julie's expression also showed a rare sign of relaxation. As for Swaegaya herself, she kept looking at the calm and smiling Noah, her eyes constantly flashing. Chapter 206. Night quietly fell. At this time, in the dormitory's lounge, many students had gathered here. They gathered in groups of 2s and 3s, chatting about everything under the sun, or sitting there excitedly watching TV. It was quite lively. And on a sofa, Noah sat here, holding a book in his hand, somewhat leisurely reading. After the last accident, Evanli strictly asked Noah to temporarily leave the room when the two opposite-sex roommates were bathing, and find something to do outside. In this way, even if there was an accident, Noah would not be able to take advantage of it. Therefore, every time when Evanli and Julie were bathing, Noah would come to the lounge and choose to leisurely pass the time. If it was before, Noah would definitely use this time effectively, and use all the leisure time to improve his strength, living the life of an ascetic. However, Noah now had the ability to limit. He could allow the restricted power to enter a state of spontaneous growth. Moreover, the extent of the increase was no less than the extent of the increase when Noah was training himself. In this way, Noah does not have to deliberately train himself, and let the strength increase by itself. Of course, the improvement of strength is one thing. Noah has always insisted that both strength and skills must be improved to achieve a true strength. Therefore, even if the strength enters a state of automatic growth, Noah should also practice martial arts and skills. However, in this regard, Noah is still a person who insists on the balance between work and rest to improve more efficiently. In this school, there are plenty of opportunities to train during the day. Therefore, Noah chose to spend the night leisurely, and let his body enter a state of full rest, to achieve the true balance between work and rest. Those who know that Noah has extraordinary strength may think that Noah reached this level through extremely hard training. But they may not have thought that being able to reasonably arrange what kind of training to do at what time, and what kind of things to do at what time, is the real reason why Noah's strength increased so fast and so strong. Not long after, more and more people in the lounge, and more people noticed Noah. Now, in the whole school, there is almost no one who does not know Noah. Even the seniors know that a super powerful person has appeared among the freshmen. All of a sudden, many discussions and conversations about Noah began to take place. Not knowing how much time has passed, a girl appeared in the lounge, and noticed the commotion in the lounge, and also saw Noah. Her eyes lit up, and she walked in the direction of Noah. "Can I disturb you for a moment?" As the voice sounded, a young girl with long black hair appeared in front of Noah. Noah raised his head and looked into the eyes of the person who had come. Noah, who saw the person's full appearance, smiled slightly. "Oh, it's Orange. Are you here to rest too? I originally wanted to play chess, but when I saw you here, I came over." Orange Bar closed his eyes and bowed solemnly to Noah. "I'm here to thank you, Noah. Thank you for helping ya." Noah, who did not expect Orange Bar to suddenly do this, was momentarily at a loss. After a while, he hurriedly shook his head. "That's nothing. You don't have to thank me so solemnly. No, that's very important to both me and ya." Orange Bar said this methodically, then lowered his head. "If it weren't for your help, you wouldn't have smiled again." At this point, Orange Bar seemed to be a little guilty. For the past few days, Ya has been very listless because she can't keep up with everyone in training. Although I'm very worried, I'm not a meticulous girl. I want to comfort Ya and help her, but I don't know what to do. Undoubtedly, Ya is my roommate and also my tripping double-edged sword, but I can't help her with anything. Speaking of which, I'm really ashamed." After saying this, Orange Bar pulled himself together slightly. "If this continues, you might not be able to hold on. So, if it weren't for your help, you might have chosen to leave the academy. Please allow me to express my gratitude to you." With that, Orange Bar bowed again. Noah, who had no time to stop her, felt a little helpless. "I understand what you mean, but to me, such a small matter is really not worth such a big bow. Orange, I understand your intentions. Please raise your head." Only then did Orange Bar relax her expression and smile at Noah. "No matter what, I have to express my gratitude to you. If there's anything you need my help with in the future, please don't hesitate to look for me." "I understand." Looking at Tachibana's face that was full of heroic spirit, Noah knew that this young lady, who was born in a family that practiced martial arts, was very serious when she said this. After muttering to himself for a while, he nodded. "If there's anything I need you for, I definitely won't hesitate to ask you." "That's good." Orange Bar let out a sigh of relief and smiled. "Then I won't disturb you." "Okay." Noah shrugged. "Good night." "Good night." Orange Bar's face had an expression as if she had a load off her mind. She left with light footsteps. Looking at Orange Bar's gradually disappearing figure, Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. A little old-fashioned, but not annoying. After making such an evaluation, Noah lowered his head and continued reading. However, after a while, a slightly nervous and flustered voice sounded in front of Noah. Hearing the voice, Noah once again raised his head. But the first thing that entered Noah's eyes was a pair of exceptionally shocking full breasts that were covered by a thin piece of clothing. The extremely shocking scene suddenly entered Noah's eyes, causing his heart to tremble. His hand trembled, and the book that was lying in his hand a second ago lost its balance and fell down. Noah frantically waved his arms and caught it several times before he finally caught it. "Ah!" At the same time, a small cry of surprise also entered Noah's ears. The owner seemed to be shocked by Noah. "Student. Noah. Are you okay?" It was Sui Gaoya. Is it Sui Gaoya?" Noah slightly raised his voice, and when he saw the strange gazes around him, he realized that he had lost his composure. Less than a meter in front of Noah, the pair of full breasts that stood parallel to him and highlighted his presence caused Noah to abruptly raise his head. When he saw Sui Gaoya's somewhat uneasy pretty face, he awkwardly smiled. "I'm sorry, I scared you." It's okay, I should be the one who scared you." Sui Gaoya thought that Noah acted like that just now because he was frightened by her sudden voice, so she apologized repeatedly. I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Just now, Orange Bar came to thank me on your behalf, and now you're thanking me on your own. As expected of the tripping double blade, you have quite a tacit understanding." "Little Ba." Sui Gaoya was surprised at first, then lowered her head in embarrassment. "Although I'm very grateful to Little Ba, that's my own business, so I have to thank you. If you really want to thank me, then you have to work hard to not be brushed away." Noah tilted his head and smiled. "After all, it wasn't easy for us to get to know each other. If even you leave the school, then Ivan and Julie will be sad." "Is that so?" Sui Gaoya secretly glanced at Noah, and her face turned red. Then, "Noah classmate. What about you?" "Me?" Noah was startled, and then smiled. "I'm the same." Looking at the smile on Noah's face, Sui Gaoya's face turned even redder, making her a little restless. After a while, she hurriedly said, In short, thank you very much. I'll go back first." Leaving this sentence, Sui Gaoya left as if she was escaping. Noah speechlessly looked at Sui Gaoya's back as she hurriedly ran away. He didn't know what to say. She came so suddenly, and she left so suddenly. This girl, is she deliberately scaring me? Chapter 207. Cheers. In the room, at the small round table, Noah, Ivanli, and Julie raised the cups in their hands and clinked them together with a ding sound. Looking closely, on the small round table, snacks of various sizes were piled up into a small hill. At first glance, it gave people the feeling that the three were looking for entertainment. But in fact, this was a small farewell party held by Noah, Ivanli, and Julie. Tomorrow is finally the weekend. Ivanli raised the cup that was filled with drinks and moved his head closer to Noah, letting a pair of beautiful big eyes into Noah's field of vision. There was a teasing look in his eyes. "Tomorrow, Julie and I will apply to form an official, tripping double blade, and the dormitory will also be redistributed. Noah, can you tell me how you feel now that you don't have two cute roommates?" "Do you want to know how I feel now?" Looking at the teasing Ivanli who turned into an interviewer, Noah's expression became quite annoyed. "I just feel that it's great that I don't have to see a certain cute roommate's underwear thrown around in the bathroom." I didn't throw it around." The teasing on Ivanli's face was suddenly replaced by embarrassment, and he shouted angrily. "I just didn't have time to clean it up." "Really?" Noah looked indifferent. I hope so. Otherwise, it will be too hard for Julie, who has to sleep in the same room with you for the next 3 years. Beside him, Julie made a concise and comprehensive sound. I also hope that Evanli can pay more attention. I hope that Julie can pay more attention to yourself. Evanli looked down and glanced at Julie's petite body. To be precise, it should be said that he looked at Julie's appearance with a troubled look. How many times have I said it? Noah is here now. Julie, can't you change your appearance? Noah couldn't help but glance at Julie and sigh helplessly. Julie purposely came all the way from her hometown, Gilliam, to this country to study at Haolang Academy. Noah also heard that Gilliam's place was usually very cold, and snow was a common occurrence. Because of this, Julie, who was used to the cold environment, came to this country with a relatively warm climate. A lot of the weather that was considered a bit cool for others would make Julie feel very hot. Therefore, after Julie came to this school, every time she returned to the dormitory, she would take off all her clothes, wearing only a shirt, and wander around the room. And this was one of the reasons why Noah's unusually sad male annoyance. As for Julie herself, she always felt that her behavior was natural. Therefore, she didn't know how many times Evanli's words, as usual, she tilted her head, with a clear ding, ding 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 ding, ding. Can't. Julie was originally an extremely cute girl, as beautiful as a doll. Undoubtedly, Julie's expression was expressionless, but her body exuded a delicate and pitiful aura, unsurprisingly, made Evanli sink. Oh. Evanli's pretty face blushed, and she turned her head away. Anyway, it's the last night, forget it. Yeah, the ahog on Julie's head shook like a small animal's tail, showing its owner's happy mood. Noah, who had been watching from the side, could only speechlessly pick up the glass of drink, put it to his mouth, and drank. However, in the next moment, Julie's words made Noah spit out the drink in his mouth. Can't I stay with Noah tomorrow? Julie, who usually had no expression on her face, suddenly showed an obvious regretful expression, and then said such a sentence. Then, tonight, can I sleep with Noah? PFFF. Noah, who was drinking his drink, felt like his chest was heavily punched, and the drink that just slid down his throat suddenly sprayed out, and sprayed toward Evanli opposite him. Originally, with Evanli's skill, it was very easy for him to dodge the incoming fountain of human bodies. It was a pity that Evanli, who did not drink the drink, did not spit it out like Noah did. Instead, he stood rooted to the ground, his entire face drenched by the drink. The air in the room froze for a moment, and then suddenly exploded. Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry. Evanli. It was rare for Noah to be so flustered. He picked up Evanli's handkerchief from the table and wiped Evanli's face. He didn't know if it was Evanli's or Julie's handkerchief. Evanli, on the other hand, stood there dumbfounded, as if he was completely confused, and his face was messy as he smiled at Julie. Julie-chan, can you please repeat what you just said? Julie tilted her head in confusion. I want to sleep with Noah tonight, is there a problem? If it was a normal situation, Evanli would definitely say, big problem, again, to the extent that the whole dormitory could hear it. However, Evanli, who already had a preliminary understanding of Julie, knew that his common sense couldn't be used on Julie, even if it was useful. At that moment, Evanli could only take a deep breath, force himself to calm down, and said earnestly. Julie-chan, about sleeping with Noah, don't you have any thoughts? Noah also wanted to say something to Julie, but based on past experience, if he spoke up, it might make things more difficult to deal with, so he simply didn't say anything, and let Evanli handle it. Under the silent gaze of Noah and Evanli, Julie lowered her eyes slightly. When I'm at home, I always sleep with my mother. So, although it's embarrassing to say it, in fact, if I sleep alone, I will feel very lonely. Is that so? Ivanli quickly said. But Julie-chan, don't you still have me to sleep with you? Ah, the clear color in Julie's pair of deep red eyes swayed. Sleeping with Ivanli reminds me of my mother, and sleeping with Noah reminds me of my father. With that said, Julie's beautiful eyes revealed a kind of nostalgia that made Noah and Ivanli speechless. When talking about her mother, Julie's eyes only had the kind of warmth that only a close family member would have. Whenever she talked about her father, Julie would often express an unusual feeling of reminiscence. Noah, who had been a little concerned about this, hesitated for a moment, and finally, chose to ask. What about your father? Julie lowered her head. He passed away a few years ago. This time, Ivanli, who wanted to stop Julie, completely chose to remain silent. And Noah, who already had some guesses and was mentally prepared, pondered for a moment, raised his hand, and touched Julie's head. It seemed that Julie found a little bit of her father's shadow in Noah, so she subconsciously had feelings of nostalgia for Noah. This made Noah slightly change his mind. Noah touched Julie's head while scratching his cheek. If Julie doesn't mind, then tonight, let me sleep with you. Julie paused for a moment, and then, her usually expressionless face revealed a very shallow smile. Ah, ha. Ivanli, who finally reacted, was stunned for a moment, and after a while, he let out a cry of surprise. Hey 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 hey. The soft silvery moonlight shone into the dark room, providing a faint light to the room that had already been turned off. At this moment, 3 people were squeezed together in the lower bunk of the 2-bunk bed. Q. Julie tightly clutched Noah's clothes, snuggled in Noah's arms, and fell asleep. Noah could only try his best not to notice the soft and delicate body in his arms, and the fragrance coming from her body, with a bitter face. And in the innermost part of the bed, Ivanli, who was sleeping on the other side of Julie, stared at Noah, as if he was guarding against theft, making Noah feel uncomfortable all over. Why do you have to squeeze in here? Noah's exasperated voice only caused Ivanli to put on a fake smile. Do you think I'll just watch the 2 of you sleep together and do nothing? Noah looked up at the bedboard, unable to speak for a long time. Chapter 208. Everyone. Good morning. In an extremely excited state, Teacher Little Rabbit, who was standing on the podium, made a cute pose. Finally, everyone has an official, tripping double blade. This is really worthy of celebration. Have your seats and dormitory been adjusted? With that said, Teacher Little Rabbit's gaze went straight to the last row in the innermost part of the classroom. Looking at the lonely teenager sitting there, she revealed a sweet and evil smile. Oh, it seems that there are people who don't have their own, tripping double blade. In the classroom, all the students followed Teacher Little Rabbit's gaze and looked at the lonely teenager sitting in a seat. Bearing the gaze from all directions, Noah, who was sitting there alone, used his hand to support his chin, turned his head, and looked out the window. Yes. In the end, Noah did not officially become a tripping double blade with others. Because no one can become Noah's tripping double blade. Just yesterday, Ivan and Julie became a tripping double blade. They moved out of Noah's room and were arranged to another room. It was said that Tachibana and Sui Gaoya formed a tripping double blade relationship. Ninefold Toru and Kue Hokusaki also formed a tripping double blade relationship. All the first-year students in the class became a tripping double blade with the person they liked. Whether it was the dormitory room or the class seats, they were all adjusted so that every student and their tripping double blade sat together and lived together. Originally, Noah thought that the school would arrange a tripping double blade for him, who did not choose a tripping double blade. Who would have thought that in the end, all the first-year students had formed a tripping double blade relationship with each other? In other words, the only person who did not have a tripping double blade was Noah. After a week of survival of the fittest, in this class, there were a total of 41 freshmen who did not apply to drop out and stayed in the school. In groups of 2, there were a total of 20 groups of tripping double blade in the class, but one person was left behind and could not form a team. This person was Noah. Even Noah did not expect that things would turn out like this. However, compared to being suddenly assigned a desk mate and roommate that he was unfamiliar with, this result made Noah feel much more relaxed. At the very least, Noah was alone in terms of his dormitory and seat. He could fully enjoy his personal space without worrying too much. Ivan and Julie sat in front of Noah. Alone. Ivan looked at the nonchalant Noah with the rest of the students and seemed a little worried. "Teacher, is it okay even without the tripping double blades? Even if you say that, Teacher Little Rabbit, have no way of suddenly finding someone to form a tripping double blade with this reclusive exception." Teacher Little Rabbit pretended to helplessly spread out her hands, but there was a smile on her face. "However, we will have even more intense training in the future. When that time comes, there will definitely be people who can't take it and apply to drop out. When that time comes, there will be people who will form a team with the exception." Hearing this, the hearts of everyone in the classroom became heavy. Then, since the official tripping double blade has been decided, we should also begin training on the blaze. Teacher Little Rabbit did not seem to notice the abnormal atmosphere and continued to speak in high spirits. "I'm here to inform everyone that next week, we will be conducting a mock battle where the blaze is allowed, new blade battle." The sudden news made many people involuntarily suck in a breath of cold air. Of course, it was caused by surprise and confusion. "No way." Ivan, who was sitting in front of Noah, said in a shocked voice. "They're going to fight right from the start." Even Noah frowned, feeling helpless against this violent school. It was a weapon that was materialized from his soul, blaze. Although it was a weapon with a simple structure under normal circumstances, since it was a weapon, it meant that it had the power to kill. The blaze formed by the soul could only be used against the soul. This was what the chairman of Awaken Academy said. However, a weapon was still a weapon. If one casually used it when it wasn't necessary, the impact would be relatively greater. Furthermore, blaze was a materialization of one's soul. There were still many secrets to it, so it wasn't appropriate to casually use it. Therefore, the Academy clearly stated that without permission, students were not allowed to casually use the blaze, otherwise they would be severely punished. However, Awaken Academy was an organization that cultivated combat skills and surpassers, so it was impossible for them not to target the surpasser's greatest weapon, even if they were to use the blaze for training. The students present were already prepared to use the blaze at any time. However, they did not expect that they would directly use the blaze in a mock battle. Now, I will begin to explain the rules of the new blade battle. Everyone, perk up your ears. It's so nice. Teacher Little Rabbit put her hands on her head and made a rabbit's ear gesture. First, the schedule. It will be on Saturday next week, the day before Golden Week. The start time will be at 5 p.m., and the end time will be at 7 p.m. There will be a total of 2 hours, and the starting signal will be the sound of the clock tower. The location will be in the area north of the Academy. Then, the opponent for the battle is. Teacher Little Rabbit's face showed an extremely joyful smile, and she raised a finger and said this sentence very happily. "Except for your tripping dual blades, everyone else is an enemy." Below, Noah's eyebrows suddenly raised. "Wait. Teacher." Ivan immediately raised his hand and stood up. "If that's the case, won't Noah be at a disadvantage without the tripping dual blades?" Pulling, little sister Ponytail, are you serious?" Teacher Little Rabbit's eyes were already curved into the shape of a crescent moon. During the entrance ceremony, with the strength of a normal person, he beat up a rank 3, who had received several years of physical and mental training and battle technique training. Or a pair of tripping dual blades who had just started training for a week. Who is more at a disadvantage? Ivanli's breath stopped. Not to mention Ivanli, even the rest of the students in the class looked at each other in dismay. They all had a bitter expression on their faces. After hearing Teacher Little Rabbit's words, the crowd of students realized that even without the tripping dual blades, Noah was still an unbeatable existence. Not to mention his amazing martial arts skills and experience, even Noah's blaze, who was known as the exception, was a very thorny problem. After all, even if he was a surpasser, if he was only at the rank 5 level, he could only be considered a superhuman and not a real inhuman. At the very least, if one wanted to clearly see a bullet that was faster than the speed of sound, it was absolutely impossible to reach the rank 3 level. And in this kind of situation, in a contest between hot weapons and cold weapons, which side had the advantage, there was no need to ask, a normal person would know. Everyone knows that the Daybreak Star rune has ranks. Every year students will participate in the Ascension ceremony at the end of the semester. Those who have received sufficient physical and mental training will be able to successfully advance. Looking at the silent crowd of students, Teacher Little Rabbit said as if to encourage them. But for the tripping dual blades who have achieved excellent results in the new blade battle, as a special reward, the school will give them a chance to advance. This sentence made the hearts of all the students become lively. Noah, who originally lacked interest in this so-called new blade battle, also had a light in his eyes as he straightened his back. If there was anything else that could arouse Noah's interest in staying in the school, other than feeling that he could get a clue about the world fragment, then it would be the Daybreak Star rune's ascension. Because that was the opportunity to let Noah's spirit and magic power be sufficiently improved. Although everyone would have such an opportunity at the end of the semester, whether or not they could successfully advance, the more opportunities to improve their strength, the better. Everyone thought so. Noah was naturally no exception. And Teacher Little Rabbit, who clearly saw Noah's performance, revealed a smile. Only, that smile was a bit sinister. Chapter 209. Most of today's classes were normal classes, and the training classes were in the afternoon. After class, as soon as the Chinese teacher walked out of the classroom, Ivanli impatiently turned around and slumped on the table in front of Noah with a melancholy expression. Undoubtedly, we've just decided on the tripping double blade, and now we're going to have a blaze mock battle. This school is really tormenting people. Is that so? Noah shook his head and said, I feel that more actual combat would be more effective in increasing our strength. Before Ivanli could reply, a stern voice sounded. That's right. Following this voice, Noah, Ivanli, and Julie were surrounded by Tachibana and Sui Gaoya. I think that the school also feels that actual combat would be more effective in increasing the strength of the students, right? Tachibana agreed with Noah's statement. Whether it's the entrance ceremony, the physical strengthening long-distance running training, or the daily classes, there have always been a lot of actual combat training. Therefore, now that we're starting to teach how to use a blaze, it definitely can't be separated from actual combat. Ever since they entered the school, until now, until the announcement of the new blade battle, Noah and the others had never experienced using a blaze before. Now, the class on how to use blaze was finally about to begin. With how ridiculous the school had always been, it wasn't hard to imagine that they would let everyone participate in a mock battle with blaze right from the start. Even so, I still hope that the school can give us some time to get used to a blaze. Sui Gaoya said with a nervous expression. The school forbids students from using a blaze, and since entering the school, we haven't had any classes related to blaze. I haven't even used my own blaze before, so I don't know how to use it. During the entrance ceremony, only those who had defeated their opponents could enter the school. That was the only time the people present had used their blaze fang. Suigia didn't fight at that time. The reason was very simple. It was because Suigaoya's opponent was scared and ran away. Suigaoya, on the other hand, was so scared that her legs went soft. In the end, she didn't manage to escape in time and ended up staying behind. That was why Suigaoya and Evanli were the same. Both of them had passed because they had lost their opponents, so they hadn't really used their blaze yet. As for me, I've learned Sword Dao before. However, Evanli's tone was rather relaxed. Although I haven't used blaze before, my blaze is also a sword, so there shouldn't be any problems using it. My blaze is also a type of weapon that I've often used in the past. Orange Bar smiled steadily. So, I don't have any problems using it. Julie opened her mouth slightly and only said this one sentence. There are no barriers to use it. Evanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Suigia all turned to look at Noah. Why are you looking at me? Noah rolled his eyes. Don't tell me you guys think that I don't even know how to pull the trigger. The group of girls looked at each other. Other than Julie, they all laughed bitterly. That's right. For Noah, whose blaze was a revolver, even if he wasn't very familiar with his blaze, he should still know how to pull the trigger. Facing a real gun, even if he only knew how to use it at this level, it would still bring an unimaginable threat and pressure to the group of students. That's great. Suigia couldn't help but murmur. If only I had the experience of using blaze, that would be great. This time is different from the entrance ceremony. Even if you fail, you won't be kicked out of the school. Orange Bar comforted her. So, yeah, you don't have to be too stubborn. After all, you can start using the blaze after school. You can get used to it when the time comes. From today until the start of the new blade battle, as long as the first grade students applied, they could use blaze in the school after school to practice. Therefore, even if they didn't have the experience of using a blaze, until the start of the new blade battle, and even during the process, there would be plenty of opportunities to use blaze. But Suigaoya's expression was still uneasy. I'm not good at fighting, it's okay. Orange Bar tried to calm Suigaoya's uneasiness. This time is different from the entrance ceremony. It's not a one-on-one duel, but a battle between tripping blades. I'm still here. Suigia smiled and nodded, but that smile, no matter how you looked at it, was very forced. Noah and the others, who already had a certain degree of understanding of Suigaoya, easily guessed her thoughts. Needless to say, Suigaoya was definitely worried that she would be a burden to Orange Bar. Gaoya, don't worry. Evanli purposely made his tone sound cheerful and patted Suigaoya's back. There are only a few people in our class who have experience in martial arts or sports. The rest are like you, ordinary students. Orange Bar is the successor of Orange Bar, so it's impossible for him to lose to those people. When fighting, don't forget to use breathing technique. Noah also looked at Suigaoya. That way, at least you'll have enough strength. If you can't win, just run. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Suigaoya nodded her head vigorously. Her expression seemed to have eased a lot compared to before. At this time, 2 male students also came over. Are you having a battle meeting? With this sentence, the 2 male students, who Noah was familiar with, also joined in. Almost at the same time, Suigaoya, who wasn't good at dealing with boys, shrank behind Orange Bar. What's wrong? Noah smiled calmly. Kyuchong, Okazaki, are you here to scout the enemy? The 2 newcomers were Kyuchong and Okazaki. Is there a need to scout the enemy? Okazaki pushed the glasses on her nose and said in a very arrogant tone. We've already seen your skills. Also, the list that the Academy gave us as a reference for choosing, tripping double blade, also recorded the general information of everyone in our class. Kyuchong rubbed his head. Although I haven't seen it, Okazaki memorized it all. That counts as enemy information, right? I've also seen that list. I vainly looked at Kyuchong and Okazaki with interest. Very few people in our class have experience in martial arts, but I think all of you have practiced martial arts before, right? That's a really strong enemy. Orange Bar showed a reluctant smile. Yeah, we have to do our best. N. Suigaya nodded again. Kyuchong fixed his gaze on Noah, his eyes full of fighting spirit. I hope we can go up against each other again this time. Humph. Okazaki smiled provocatively. This time, we won't lose. Kyuchong and Okazaki looked at each other and smiled, then turned and left. A declaration before the battle. I vainly blinked at Noah. They're not afraid of going up against you. Is that so? Noah shrugged and said. Are you afraid of going up against me? How is that possible? Ivanli and Orange Bar answered almost at the same time. Last time, you purposely let me in, I still remember that. Ivanli said with dissatisfaction. I want to prove that at that time, even if you didn't let me in, I could still get in. I've been wanting to fight you for a long time. Orange Bar was a little excited. I won't lose that easily. Yeah, Julie nodded. Even if your opponent is Noah, you can't admit defeat. Suigaya secretly glanced at Noah, then shyly hid behind Orange Bar. Obviously, it was a bit difficult for this timid girl to make a declaration. Looking at this group of cute girls, Noah smiled knowingly. Let's do our best. Chapter 210. In the woods surrounding the school, Noah walked in with steady steps. He arrived at an open space and looked around. Looking at the open space and the surrounding trees, Noah nodded slightly. He closed his eyes, reached out a hand, and pressed it on his chest. Blaze! Following Noah's call, a buzz trembled. A pure white geometric pattern called the star pattern spun and spread out from the center of Noah's chest and imprinted itself on Noah's chest. Pang! A burst of fiery red light rose from the star pattern and turned into a gorgeous flame. It burned fiercely, and not long after, it condensed into the shape of a weapon. It was the shape of a weapon called a gun. The burning flame flashed, and the pitch-black gun that was covered with white tree-like patterns was exposed to the air. Noah could clearly feel that compared to the time before it had become a part of his soul and turned into his blaze, what kind of changes had happened to the revolver now that it had become a blaze. First of all, the cold feeling that was unique to metal in the past had disappeared and was replaced by a fiery warmth. Noah opened his eyes and looked at the blaze markings on the body of his revolver. He stroked the white markings and carefully experienced the feeling of the gun in his hands. It was completely different from before. In the next second, Noah suddenly raised the gun in his hand and aimed the revolver muzzle at a tree. Pang! The moment he pulled the trigger, the gunshot rang out. The pitch-black bullet formed by mental strength pierced through the air and directly landed on the tree trunk. Pang! Suddenly, the sound of an explosion shook the air. On the tree trunk that Noah's blaze was aimed at, wood chips flew everywhere, and a huge hole the size of a wash basin appeared on top of it. The power was terrifying. Looking at the huge hole in the tree caused by his revolver bullet, Noah tightened his grip on the gun. After a while, he let out a sigh of relief. It's still all right. Although its power has increased after becoming the blaze, its recoil has also increased. This requires the user to have greater arm strength to use it. However, with the arm strength of stage I, it shouldn't be a big problem to use it. After becoming Noah's blaze, the revolver, that was originally comparable to an anti-tank sniper rifle's power had indeed increased, making this gun that was specially modified for power became even more terrifying. Of course, as the power increased, so did the recoil. If one wanted to use this gun, it wasn't strange that the required arm strength would increase. However, since Noah's arm strength was only comparable to that of an ordinary level 1 after going through the limitation, he could still use it normally. After confirming this, Noah let out a sigh of relief. Without the limitations of bullets, and with sufficient arm strength, the revolver no longer had any shortcomings. Compared to the simpler blaze of the other surpassers, this blaze had too many advantages. After confirming the status of his blaze, Noah did not continue to stay here and walked out of the forest. Noah also had another blaze, knight's sword. There is only one human soul. Therefore, there was only one surpasser's blaze fang. Noah's situation was different from the other surpassers. Under a freak combination of factors, he had 2 blaze fangs. Noah did not intend to reveal this point. The appearance of the revolver, a complex blaze that shouldn't have appeared, had already made Noah extremely eye-catching. Not to mention, he had also gained the title of exception. Noah did not want to show that he was different from others. Therefore, the blaze of the revolver turned into a flame in Noah's hand and disappeared on the spot. After walking out of the forest, Noah, who was about to walk in the direction of the dormitory, suddenly saw a person running in his direction. It was a girl with a delicate face, wearing a gymnastic uniform. She was rhythmically adjusting her breathing while trying to run in Noah's direction. Noah immediately stopped in his tracks and looked over in surprise. Sui Gao. Perhaps because she heard Noah's voice, Sui Gao, who was running, raised her head and met Noah's gaze. A trace of surprise appeared on her face. Noah. Noah classmate. She did not know if it was because she was too surprised, but Sui Gao's footsteps were unsteady. She turned, screamed, and fell forward. Hearing Sui Gao's exclamation, Noah, who reacted, immediately dodged and pounced over without hesitation to catch Sui Gao, who was falling down. Hey, 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 be careful. You little girl, why are you so clumsy? Ah. Sui Gao also noticed that she was being hugged by Noah, who had caught her when she fell. At that moment, her entire face turned completely red, and even her ears turned red. Before Sui Gao came to Haolang Academy, she was a girls' student. Naturally, in a situation where everyone around her was of the same sex, Sui Gao did not have many opportunities to come into contact with the opposite sex. Today was definitely the closest Sui Gao had ever come to the opposite sex. If it were in the past, Sui Gao would definitely be extremely flustered at this time. But for some reason, in Noah's arms, Sui Gao unexpectedly found that she did not feel the slightest bit repulsed. Instead, she missed it very much and wanted to stay like this forever. Incredible. It was really incredible. For Sui Gao, who was so close to the opposite sex for the first time, such an experience was really inexperienced and did not understand anything. It was natural that she would feel it was incredible. On the other hand, looking at Sui Gao, who suddenly hid in his arms and did not speak, Noah's body also froze there. This girl, why didn't she get up? This made Noah unable to continue hugging her. Even his expression and voice became a little awkward. Sui Gao. Aren't you getting up? N. Sui Gao, who was awakened by Noah, instinctively nodded. Immediately, she reacted and her pretty face turned completely red. Then, she realized what she had just done and involuntarily pushed Noah away. Her face was so red that it was almost dripping blood. She stepped back step by step and finally cried out. I'm sorry. Sui Gao, who inexplicably apologized, ran away as if she was escaping. Wait. Wait! Noah was shocked and hurriedly chased after her. On the way back to the dormitory, Sui Gao kept her head down. Her face was so red that it was as if it was on fire. She did not dare to raise her head to look at Noah beside her. Moreover, she kept a subtle distance from Noah. Noah's expression was also a little awkward. For a moment, he did not know what to say. He subconsciously chased after her, but in the end, he was greeted with such an uncomfortable atmosphere that Noah wanted to run away several times. But if he ran away like this, it would be as if he was deliberately hugging Sui Gao. Noah held on tightly, and only then did he walk with Sui Gao in the direction of the dormitory. Noah, who felt that this could not go on, could only open his mouth awkwardly and change the topic. Right, Sui Gao, what were you doing there just now? It turned out that Noah's method of changing the topic was quite effective. Sui Gao suddenly showed an awkward expression, as if it was difficult to say. Her gaze moved back and forth between her feet and Noah's body. After a while, she opened her mouth in a mosquito-like voice. Slow, jogging, and... Noah was slightly startled, and his tone was full of uncertainty. Jogging? N. Sui Gao seemed to have plucked up her courage. She raised her head slightly and secretly observed Noah's reaction from the corner of her eyes. Recently, I've been running about 20 kilometers every day. Hearing this, Noah was a little surprised. Chapter 2:11. Run 20 kilometers every day. Looking at Sui Gao, who seemed to be in a difficult position, Noah couldn't help but open his mouth. Do you still insist on running 20 kilometers every day after having to run 40 kilometers in the physical enhancement course? Noah was indeed very surprised. After all, ever since Sui Gao, who wasn't good at sports, fainted on the first day of the physical strengthening class, this weak-hearted girl had a gloomy expression on her face every day. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that she was afraid of these classes as if they were ghosts. But now, Sui Gao actually said something like this. How could Noah not be surprised? Maybe it was because she knew that what she said was very inconceivable, so Sui Gao showed a difficult expression. If I want to use my blaze, physical strength is a must. Sui Gao explained in a mosquito-like voice. So, in order to increase my physical strength, I want to work a little harder. You need physical strength. Noah couldn't help but touch his chin. Last time, in the list provided to the students to choose the tripping double blade, as a reference, Sui Gao's blaze was also written in it. Noah only confirmed the blaze of Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Sui Gao. The rest of the students were all omitted. So, when he thought of Sui Gao's blaze on the list, Noah was relieved. No wonder, recently I felt that your performance in the physical strengthening class was getting better and better. So it was because of this. Recently, Sui Gao was already able to use the breathing technique taught by Noah and shorten the time of a 40-kilometer run to half an hour. Originally, Noah thought that Sui Gao was gradually mastering the breathing technique, allowing her breathing to become more precise than before and allowing her physical strength to recover faster. He didn't think that there was actually a private reason for her to work hard. Thinking of this, Noah chuckled. Not bad, Sui Gao. Knowing how to work hard is a good thing. Ah. N. Sui Gao's pretty face slightly reddened. She lowered her head and started twirling her fingers. That's all because of Noah. N. Noah said with a puzzled expression. What does your hard work have to do with me? Because, if it wasn't for Noah classmate helping me, I might have already given up on staying here and left the school. Sui Gao revealed a slightly lonely expression. Actually, whether it's in learning or sports, there have always been a lot of things that I'm not good at. In my previous school, the people next to me were also better than me. It even made me wonder if I was a superfluous existence. So, when someone told me that I have the adaptability of the daybreak star rune that only 1 in 1,000 people has, I was really happy. But after coming to this school, I realized that even if I have talent that others don't have, compared to the people around me, I'm still very useless. Sui Gaoya's head was so low that no one could see her expression. But after a while, she raised her head and smiled shyly. Just when I was about to give up, Noah classmate stood up and saved me, giving me the strength to continue staying here. Saved. Noah was silent for a while, and then directly laughed bitterly. You're making it sound a bit serious. I just thought that since we know each other, I would help you if I could. For me, that's just a small matter, so you can feel grateful to me. But if you say that you're so grateful, I feel that you're thinking too highly of me. Maybe, for Noah classmate, it really is a small matter, but for me, it's saving. Sui Gaya shook her head vigorously, her eyes finally meeting Noah's for the first time. I'm really very happy that you were able to stand up and help me. Moreover, you also gave me the strength to become stronger. I'm really very grateful to you. The breathing technique was not only used to restore physical strength and increase endurance. In fact, if one thought about it carefully, it was very easy to understand the true use of the breathing technique. As previously said, running was the simplest and most effective way to increase physical strength. If one wanted to increase their physical strength, as long as they could continue to run, sooner or later their physical strength would be fully grown. With the help of the breathing technique, Sui Gaoya's physical strength recovery speed became faster, and she was able to persist in running for a longer time. And with enough time to train, why would one worry about their physical strength not increasing by a large amount? Sui Gaoya could now shorten the time of a 40-kilometer run to 1.5 hours. This was the proof. Clearly understanding this point, Noah could only faintly sigh, and revealed a smile to Sui Gaoya. Since it's like this, then you have to continue to work hard. Don't let others surpass you. N. Sui Gaoya first nodded her head blankly, but after she reacted, she repeatedly nodded her head. I'll definitely work hard. Saying this, Sui Gaoya once again lowered her head with a hesitant look. After a while, she spat out a word, letting her small voice drill into Noah's ears with difficulty. Yeah, N. Noah looked at Sui Gaoya in a daze. What? Yeah. Sui Gaoya's pretty face was slightly red as she said. I hope you. You can call me by my name. Call me. Yeah. After finally understanding Sui Gaoya's meaning, Noah couldn't help but laugh, but his answer was unusually straightforward. Then in the future, don't call me Noah classmate, just call me Noah. Sui Gaoya slowly raised her head, and a relieved smile appeared on her adorable face. She nodded her head vigorously. N. Looking at the bright smile on Sui Gaoya's face, Noah also couldn't help but smile. When they first met, the timid Sui Gaoya who was unwilling to make eye contact with Noah, only daring to timidly hide behind others, secretly observing Noah, was like a phantom, disappearing from Noah's mind. Neither Noah nor Sui Gaoya noticed. The subtle distance between the two at the beginning, unknowingly, had long been occupied by the two figures. At night, sitting in front of the small round table, Noah, who was drinking a cup of hot tea made by himself, looked around. Room, still the same room. Dormitory, still the same dormitory. Even the layout, still the same layout. However, in the closet, all the clothes that didn't belong to Noah had disappeared, and the luggage and belongings of the two girls who lived here not long ago also disappeared. The only things left were Noah's own things. Ivan and Julie, who had formed a formal, tripping double blade, moved out of this room without any accident. To be honest, Noah felt relieved because he didn't have to continue to endure and suffer mentally, but at the same time, he also felt a little lonely deep in his heart. The two friends who had been living in the closest place to him left just like that, excluding all kinds of troubles. It was natural for him to feel lonely. Until now, Noah realized that he wasn't as happy about Ivan and Julie leaving as he thought he was. However, that's also something that can't be helped. Noah muttered to himself as if he was comforting himself. However, when he realized that it was useless, he patted his face and pulled himself together. He raised the cup in his hand and finished all the tea in it before standing up. "Let's go to sleep." With that said, Noah was about to turn off the light and get into his bed, but suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Noah stopped and shouted out reflexively. "Who is it?" The moment his voice reverberated, a silent atmosphere enveloped the entire dormitory. Until 3 or 4 seconds later, a voice sounded slightly. Yeah. With such a simple word, Noah understood who it was. Except for Julie, no one would use such a word as a response. Immediately, Noah hurried to the door and opened it. The next moment, the petite silver-haired girl's figure was imprinted in Noah's eyes. The moment he saw Julie standing at his door, Noah couldn't stay calm. Because, as always, Julie only wore a white shirt and hugged a pillow. Chapter 2:12. Looking at the beautiful silver-haired girl in front of him wearing only a white shirt, hugging a small pillow, her 2 white thighs directly exposed to the air, Noah almost subconsciously reached out, pulled Julie into his room, and closed the door. Bang dash. The loud sound of the door closing suddenly sounded, and it also woke up Julie, who was pulled into the room because she couldn't react in time. The next moment, Julie looked at Noah with her crimson eyes full of disbelief, making Noah laugh out loud. Of course, Julie was wondering why Noah suddenly made such a reaction. But for Noah, he believed that no matter who encountered the same situation, they would have the same reaction. There was no distinction between men and women in this dorm. That is to say, Julie just appeared in the dorm with this outfit that could be admired by boys everywhere. It should be known that Julie was originally a cute girl who could make people stare at her with just her appearance. If Julie appeared in front of the boys with this outfit, Noah didn't know if someone would directly pounce on her, but in that case, the stinky boys would definitely take advantage of her. Noah, who didn't realize that he had subconsciously excluded himself from the list of stinky boys, looked at Julie with a serious face. "Although I really want to ask Julie why you came to me, before that, please allow me to ask a very serious question." Yeah. Julie, who was overwhelmed by Noah's imposing manner, answered in a daze, and the ahog on her head trembled. "Please, ask. I hope you answer honestly," Noah said with a serious face. "On the way here, did you meet anyone?" Julie suddenly tilted her head, and the bell immediately shook, making a ding-ling sound. Then Julie answered honestly. "My room and Ivanli's room is not far from here, so we didn't meet anyone." It made sense. Julie was so cute. Her appearance at the entrance ceremony and when she entered the class had caused a commotion. If Julie's outfit was seen by the boys, there would definitely be an unimaginable commotion. Looking at how calm everything was now, Julie's outfit shouldn't have been seen by anyone. Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, making Julie still look at him in disbelief. "What happened?" "No, it's nothing. Please don't mind it." Noah laughed dryly and then showed a puzzled expression. "But, Julie, why are you looking for me at this time?" The moment he said that, the ahog on Julie's head trembled again. Undoubtedly, her cute face didn't change at all. She still lacked emotions, but in that instant, Noah felt a sense of pity for her. Immediately after, Julie slightly lowered her head and said such a sentence. "Without Noah in the room, I feel a bit lonely." Lonely? Noah scratched his cheek uncomfortably. But isn't there still Ivan? Yeah, Julie nodded her head lightly and stared at Noah without letting go. But, lonely is still lonely. Okay. Noah, who was worried that he would be defeated under Julie's gaze, could only avoid Julie's burning gaze. He glanced at the pillow in front of Julie, and a thought emerged in his mind that made him not know whether to laugh or cry. You're not planning to come over and sleep with me, right? Yeah, this time, Julie's entire body emitted a pitiful aura, as if she was a little animal that was afraid of being abandoned by its owner. She stared straight at Noah. Can't I? If possible, Noah really wanted to answer no. But, if there was someone in this world who could be so cruel to give such an answer at this time, Noah would be very impressed. At least, Noah was defeated in an instant, and he bitterly smiled. Only this time. Yeah, the ahog on Julie's head shook like a tail. Not long after, the lights in the dorm went out. Good night, Noah. Good night, Julie. Almost at the same time, Noah and Julie said goodnight to each other. Although Julie's voice and expression didn't change from beginning to end, Noah heard a trace of lightness in it. Obviously, Julie's mood was very good. Noah couldn't help but recall the time when he was still in the world of the Black Bullet, those children who were still so innocent and cute despite being ostracized, and Xiaoshe and Tina, who often crawled into his bed. He reached out and patted Julie's head. And this also seemed to make Julie want to be closer to Noah. She tightly grasped Noah's sleeve, buried her head in Noah's arms, and whispered in a somewhat lonely tone. Daddy's smell. Is it? Noah's hand that touched Julie's head became more gentle. This was a child who yearned for love. Even if she had extraordinary looks and extraordinary strength, she still stayed in this dangerous school. This girl who never showed her feelings on her face didn't really have feelings in her heart. It should be said that it was the opposite, right? Therefore, the only thing that was consistent in Julie's appearance was probably her childish appearance, which fully expressed that this girl was still a child who needed love. So, without thinking, Noah said, "If you want, you can come to me at any time." Julie raised her head from Noah's arms and looked at Noah's eyes with a stunned expression. Only then did Noah realize what he had said and hurriedly added. "It's only allowed when you feel very lonely, Julie, do you understand?" Julie, who understood Noah's meaning, a pair of deep red eyes became bright in the darkness, and as if expressing gratitude, she hugged Noah tightly. "Aw, I'm so happy." On the other side, Noah, who was hugged by Julie, finally felt Julie's small but soft chest and the fragrance that became more intense due to the close contact. His body stiffened. At this time, Noah began to regret his words. In this way, the troubles that finally left Noah also returned, telling Noah that his life was still destined to be full of turmoil. However, at the same time, the faintly discernible loneliness also disappeared. Noah and Julie, who slowly fell into a deep sleep, had long forgotten. They forgot a person. Early morning, before waking up from his sleep state, Noah felt a dangerous aura lock onto him. At this time, Noah quivered and woke up, fiercely opening his eyes. However, a black shadow occupied Noah's entire field of vision, and let out such a voice. "You're enjoying yourself, Noah." Hearing this voice, Noah's mouth slightly opened, his face stiff as he raised his head and looked at the face of the black shadow. Brown waist-length hair was tied into a long ponytail, hanging naturally behind her. Wearing the school uniform, a pair of gem-like eyes were half squinted, filled with a bone-piercing cold light, causing the temperature in the air to drop by a lot. The newcomer, if not Julie's true roommate, then who could it be? "In order to show my strength in front of you in the new blade battle, yesterday I especially worked hard to practice against Blaze. In the end, I didn't even take a shower before I was so tired that I fell asleep." Ivan clenched his fists, closed his eyes, and the veins on his forehead popped out. "And you actually kidnapped Julie to your room, it seems like you spent a not a bad night." Sensing that Ivan's body was surging with an even more dangerous aura, firmly locked onto him, Noah failed to live up to his expectations and revealed a resentful smile, but after realizing that this was useless against the angry girl, he gave up and squeezed out a sentence. "Although I can roughly guess what's going to happen next, I still want to know, do I still have a chance to explain?" "Ha!" Ivan laughed, an extremely sinister laugh. "Many say no. After finishing his words, Ivan took a deep breath, and shouted under Noah's slightly desperate expression. "You shameless bastard!" The flustered and exasperated voice resounded throughout the entire dormitory. Chapter 213. Dusk, as if it wanted to devour the entire sky, crazily expanded. The shadow behind Noah was elongated by the setting sun. He looked up at the clock tower that could be clearly seen from within the school grounds or even from outside. It had been a long time since he saw the clock tower. The corners of his mouth curled into an arc that was full of fighting spirit. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Not long after, the clear sound of the clock tower's bell resounded through the entire sky. Like the thunder before a storm, it announced the start of the battle. It announced the start of the battle called New Blade Battle. Standing at the waiting area determined by drawing lots, Noah clearly felt that the moment the clock tower's bell rang, the entire school's atmosphere became tense. Then, with dusk as the background, every place in the school flickered with light. It flickered with the light of a scorching flame that any surpasser would be familiar with. That was the phenomenon of a weapon that represented the soul obtaining a form in this world. And the appearance of this phenomenon also caused the tense atmosphere in the air to explode all of a sudden. Even without seeing it with his own eyes, Noah could imagine the scene in his mind. In the current school, those students who had materialized ablaze were running around in search of their opponents and advantageous terrain. In the New Blade Battle, the tripping twin blades that obtained an excellent result would receive the Ascension Ritual as a reward. Although he didn't know what kind of excellent result would count, he didn't need to think to know that only by defeating the other teams as much as possible would one be able to show off one's results. In order to obtain this opportunity to ascend, many students would probably go all out. It was even possible that they would choose to deal with other teams by hook or by crook. Noah didn't have the slightest interest in fighting with his classmates. After all, those students had only gone through physical strengthening training. Their combat training hadn't been thoroughly carried out yet. They only knew how to wield their blades without knowing a thing or two about fighting. They simply couldn't be considered opponents. If he had to say who he was interested in, Noah would only be interested in the 3 pairs of tripping twin blades. Ivanli and Julie. Tachibana and Kujuryu Totoro and Oki Hokusaki. Among the 3 pairs of tripping blades, Ivan had learned swordsmanship, Tachibana was a descendant of the famous Tachibana 18 arts, Kyuchi Totoro had learned martial arts from Kukui Totoro, and Julie seemed to have a certain degree of combat skills. Ivanya, who didn't have strong combat skills, had learned the breathing technique, which could play a certain role in battle. Therefore, Noah's fighting spirit was basically directed towards these 3 pairs of tripping blades. As for the other students, Noah had heard that there were 1 or 2 pairs of double tripping blades that were more experienced in sports. Their fighting strength was much stronger than the average student, but compared to the 3 pairs of double tripping blades that Noah noticed, there were still some shortcomings. "It's been a long time since we last had a fight." After saying that, Noah closed his eyes and sensed the direction of someone's aura. Then, he chose the closest direction and walked in that direction. Hiya hiya hi. In the spacious forest, several figures rushed out from the surrounding trees and bushes. They held weapons that had tree root-like patterns on their bodies. While shouting loudly, they rushed towards a figure standing in the middle of the open space, completely surrounding that figure. Pang! Unfortunately, in the next moment, a volcanic eruption force rushed into the sky. Like a gust of wind, it attacked the figures that surrounded the figure. While the branches and leaves on the ground were blown away, it also sent the crowd of people that surrounded the figure flying. After a burst of crackling sounds, the group of students that rushed out from the bushes to attack the people in the open space all fell to the ground. They didn't even feel any pain, as if their heads were numb and they fainted. Chi. The weapons all over the ground turned into flames and dissipated. The blaze that was obtained by materializing a soul would disappear when the wielder lost consciousness. And this was also the standard used to determine the outcome of a battle between surpassers. Looking at the students that were lying on the ground, Noah, who was standing in the middle of the open space, rubbed his head and helplessly shook his head. This time, there were 3 pairs of tripping dual blades that attacked at the same time. Along the way, Noah had already defeated 4 pairs of tripping dual blades. Among these 4 pairs of tripping dual blades, some chose to face Noah head-on, some chose to sneak attack, some used other methods, and some directly rushed in front of Noah and were directly knocked down by Noah. Noah didn't think that there would be people that chose to team up. However, it could still be considered as a method. Whoosh! Just as he was thinking this, a figure suddenly broke through the air and rushed behind Noah. The sharp weapon in the figure's hand turned into a black shadow and was mercilessly thrown in the direction of Noah. The gleaming sharp weapon tore through the air, bringing with it a sharp wind, and directly smashed down on Noah, who was in front of him. However, when the sharp weapon was less than 10 centimeters away from Noah's head, Noah's body immediately became like a leaf blown by the wind. He lightly floated along with the sharp wind and took a step back. Whoosh! The sharp weapon brought with it a powerful force, and it almost touched Noah's body as it fell. The airflow it contained blew all of Noah's hair back. Not a bad attack. With a calm appearance, Noah narrowly avoided the attack of the sharp weapon. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and his body suddenly retreated as if it was weightless. In an instant, he rushed forward with the sharp weapon in his hand, and grabbed the arm of the figure behind him. Unfortunately, the attack trajectory is too simple, and it can be easily seen through. Saying this, Noah used his strength and threw the attacker who was grabbed by the arm away. This was just a very casual movement. Therefore, the attacker adjusted his body mid-air and landed steadily on the ground. He looked at Noah with eyes full of helplessness. Sure enough, there's no way. Is it that easy? Saying this, the attacker did not lose his will to fight. Instead, he stared at Noah eagerly and raised the sharp weapon in his hand. It was a knife. It was a weapon unique to this country, the katana. As for Blaze, who was holding such a katana, his brown ponytail swayed in the air behind him. It was none other than Ivan. However, Ivanli was not the only one who came. Shaw. In the woods nearby, the sound of leaves rustling could be heard, and a few trees suddenly shook. Immediately after, 2 figures flashed out from the side and stood on the branches of the trembling trees. They looked down at Noah, who was in the middle of the field. They were 2 young girls with long, straight silver hair and beautiful, jet black, long, flowing hair. She had long, straight silver hair and 2 headbands with bells on them. She held a pair of dual blades in her hands. It was a weapon as thin as a pair of wings, the blade sword. The young girl with long black hair was tightly holding a chain with a water droplet at the front, the iron chain. Noah had confirmed these 3 blaze weapons on the list. However, this was the first time he saw them with his own eyes. Oh! Looking at the 3 beautiful girls who were standing in a triangular formation, 1 on the ground and 2 on the tree, all of them aiming their weapons at him, Noah smiled. I didn't expect that you guys would join hands. We met on the way here. Tachibana, who was holding the iron chain, looked at Noah and pretended to smile casually. That's why we decided to form the alliance against Noah. Although Tachibana and I wanted to fight you one-on-one, as expected, we should join hands this time. Ivan revealed a sly expression. After all, we don't want to lose too badly. Yeah, Julie also raised her blade sword, her eyes full of seriousness. Because Noah is very strong. After saying this, the three girls suddenly looked at each other, and all of them took a step forward and threw themselves at Noah. Chapter 2:14. Pang. Amidst the three low and deep voices that sounded in unison, the two delicate figures standing on the tree branches gently pressed against the tree branches, transforming into black shadows that rushed down like bats hunting for their prey in the dark night. The only one standing on the ground, Ivanli, also flashed out in a short moment, like a meteor, directly in front of Noah. Noah raised his eyebrows when he saw that the three young ladies had all closed in on him in an instant. He suddenly clenched his fist tightly and with a twist of his elbow, a whirlpool-like airflow rapidly agglomerated on Noah's fist. He viciously smashed it down on Ivan's figure, who had appeared in front of him first. The sharp wind contained in the fist directly tore through the air. Feeling the sharp sound of the wind breaking from the top of his head, although Ivanli's face changed, he did not lose his calmness. He suddenly raised his arm, and the katana in his hand immediately flashed an arc of light, and heavily chopped towards Noah's incoming fist. Blaze is a strange weapon that only causes damage to the soul, and does not cause direct damage to the human body. With such a point of view, Ivanli did not have the slightest intention of mercy, and forcefully raised his katana, and forcibly collided with Noah's incoming fist. Clang! The sharp katana directly collided with the fist, and unexpectedly, there was a sound of steel colliding with steel. Ugh! And at the intersection of the two, the powerful force that surged from Noah's fist slightly pressed Ivanli's body with the katana, making Ivanli let out a slight groan. Noah still maintained his indifference, the corner of his mouth curved, his left hand clenched into a fist, and struck out like lightning, and suddenly stopped when it was less than half a meter away from Ivanli's chest. However, Noah's fist stopped, and under the guidance of the fist, the impact of the wind on Ivanli's body did not have the slightest intention of stopping. It turned into an invisible airflow, and without a trace, rushed into Ivanli's body, and then exploded in front of Ivanli. Dong! Goo! Ivanli let out a second muffled groan, as his body was forced back a few steps by the force of the explosion. And at this time, as if to replace Ivanli's attacking position, Julie, whose speed was much faster than Orange Bar, turned into a silver shadow, and rushed towards Noah while Ivanli was retreating. However, no matter what kind of surprise attack it was, under Noah's powerful perception ability that ordinary people did not have, no matter how fast the attacker was, they could not escape Noah's perception. At that moment, Noah once again slowly clenched his fist, without the slightest fanciness, and without any technique, he raised it, and directly blasted it. It was a move without the slightest bit of fancy, but it made Julie's cute face tense up. She raised the blade in her left hand, and a cold light flashed on the blade. As Julie suddenly swung it, it cut through the air and collided with Noah's incoming fist. Ding! Following a soft sound, the already thin blade sword suddenly surged with a force like a volcanic eruption, causing Julie's sword-wielding hand to go numb. Her diving figure seemed to have been pushed away as she was sent flying backwards. On the other hand, Noah's body only trembled, but his feet did not move at all. Obviously, in a competition of pure strength, Julie's petite figure was not just a little bit weaker than Noah. However, Julie, who had stabilized her body, was like a silver wolf ambushing an ambush. With a sound of breaking wind, her feet quickly touched the ground, and her body was like a ghost, constantly flashing around Noah's body. The blade in her hands occasionally brought about a burst of brilliant sword light, creating a sharp, chong-chong sound of cutting. She danced like a storm of swords, enveloping Noah's entire body. Oh. Noah, who had not seen Julie's strength before, was slightly surprised that Julie was able to continuously attack with her sword. He did not choose to meet force with force, and instead, his feet touched the ground, and his body nimbly flashed left and right within the sword curtain, retreating. With Noah's current body strength, which was only equivalent to rank I, it was impossible for him to meet weapons like the katana and the blade head-on. The reason why he was able to meet force with force and force back the katana and blade was mainly because the blades did not directly harm the body, but only the soul. Therefore, even though Noah's use of his fish to block Ivan's katana and Julie's blade seemed very powerful, in reality, Noah really did feel that his soul was being attacked. It was as if his head had been heavily knocked, causing his vision to spin. Speaking of pain, it wasn't that painful, but it was as if one's consciousness had been disturbed, causing a feeling similar to motion sickness, which was very uncomfortable. Noah didn't want to be hit by the blaze that could deal such damage again. If that happened, he might really lose the battle. Choke. However, Julie didn't want to let Noah go. The blades in her hands were like two rotating windmills, and they fiercely chopped at Noah. Thus, the scene of a silver whirlwind of blades chasing after a pitch-black figure appeared in the vast open space. Under such circumstances, Julie's speed became faster and faster. As time passed, the silver blade whirlwind turned into a silver blade storm, slicing the leaves that landed on it into halves. However, at a certain moment, Noah's gaze suddenly focused. His body moved, and like a bolt of lightning that escaped from a storm, he flashed through the air and appeared on Julie's left. Raising his palm, Noah's hand blade carried a sharp force, and forcefully chopped at Julie's wrist, who didn't have time to react. Paw! With a smacking sound, Julie let out a small cry of pain. Her blade couldn't help but fall out of her hand, spinning and landing on the ground not far away. "You're really fast, Julie." Noah's voice drilled into Julie's ears as her eyes rippled with emotions. "Only, your attack is too light. It's too easy for others to see through it." The moment he finished speaking, Julie only saw a blur in front of her eyes. Noah, who was just on her left, spun like a top, his feet sliding in a semicircle. In front of Julie, he spun to her back. Immediately after, the hand blade in his other hand was raised, and heavily fell towards the back of Julie's neck. If she was hit, Julie was afraid that she would be the first to fall in front of Ivan and Tachibana, just like Dajia. Shio! Just as Noah's hand blade was about to land on Julie's neck, a ding-ling-ling sound was mixed with a sharp piercing sound. It rubbed against the atmosphere, and like an arrow, it fiercely shot towards Noah's direction. It was a black shadow. A black shadow formed by the iron chain. Like a viper waiting for an opportunity to move, in a breath's time, the iron chain swept in front of Noah. Noah's hand blade that was chopping towards the back of Julie's neck was completely sluggish. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and he fiercely retreated. In the next moment, the iron chain that was faintly covered in a layer of faintly discernible flames flashed like lightning. With a blazing wind, it descended from above and landed on the ground. Paw! Amidst the sound of a whip hitting the ground that was heavily hit by the iron chain cracked, and a pitch-black pattern that looked like it was forcibly crushed by a tire that suddenly braked. Noah, who was retreating, subconsciously looked in the direction of the iron chain, and then he saw it. Standing on a tree trunk, Tachibana, who was pulling the end of the iron chain in his hand, shouted as he forcefully pulled back his iron chain. "Now!" The moment Tachibana's shout fell, a figure holding the hilt of a katana appeared behind Noah. As if waiting for Noah for a long time, he raised his katana and fiercely chopped towards Noah, who was retreating in his direction. At the same time, Julie, who was holding the blade sword in her hand, also rushed out. Her silver hair swayed, and in the blink of an eye, she rushed in front of Noah. The blade sword and tachibana, one in front and one behind, brought about a cold arc of light, and violently chopped towards Noah's chest and back, like a pincer attack. Chapter 2:15. Clang. The fragmented blade sword and Tachi drew out a long sword light as they chopped towards Noah from the front and back. Feeling the sharp gale created by the fragmented blade sword and Tachi, which were like sharp blades pressing against his chest and back, Noah's deep and dark eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of admiration. It had only been a week since the official, double-tripping blade sword had been formed. In a situation where there wasn't enough time to start the lessons on cooperation, Ivanli and Julie were actually able to cooperate to such a degree. It was really hard to find fault with them. What was even more admirable was Tachibana. Whether it was Ivanli or Julie, although the two of them were very familiar with Tachibana, in terms of fighting, the three of them had no interaction at all. Even so, Tachibana was still able to find an opportunity to make a pincer attack for Ivanli and Julie. With such keen fighting instincts, people couldn't help but secretly praise him for being the successor of the famous Tachibana 18 arts. But what surprised Noah the most was Julie. This was because Julie clearly looked weaker than Ivan, who had learned the way of the sword, and Tachibana, who had inherited the 18 arts of orange flow, in all aspects. However, in reality, Noah could tell. Ivanli, Julie, and Tachibana. Among the three girls, Julie, who had never seriously learned martial arts, was the strongest in terms of combat strength. With just a glance, Noah could tell that Julie had never learned martial arts. But Julie's swordsmanship was completely natural. Clearly, it was the same as when Noah and Alusha first learned swordsmanship. She had completely relied on herself to figure out her swordsmanship. To put it bluntly, other than Kyujuju Turyu and Oki Hokusaki, among the first years, Ivanli, Julie, and Tachibana had the strongest fighting strength. Of course, this didn't include Noah. No matter how good the three girls' coordination was, or how strong their fighting strength was, when faced with Noah, who had extraordinary perceptive abilities, combat experience, and fighting skills, they could only nurse a grievance. Suppressing the admiration for the three girls in his heart, Noah reached out a hand and pressed it on his chest. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar, who were standing on a tree trunk not far away, narrowed their eyes at the same time. Wang. Shortly after, a white star pattern spun and expanded from Noah's chest and imprinted itself on Noah's chest. Bang! Scorching flames erupted from within and spread out in all directions. Blazing Fang. Following its owner's call, a revolver with white markings appeared from the blazing flames and was held in Noah's hand. Then, Noah, who was holding the revolver tightly, suddenly waved his hand around. Who? With a muffled sound of wind, a pitch-black arc flashed in the surroundings, solidly colliding with the incoming katana and katana. Clang! Amidst the sound of metal clashing, they collided with the black arcs of the katana and the katana, creating a burst of bright sparks on the sharp edges of the two blaze weapons. Clang! Unfortunately, the sparks flashed for less than 2 seconds before the katana and katana that collided with the pitch-black arc were bounced back by a huge force. Goo! Ivanli and Julie, who were attacking Noah from both sides, had a look of discomfort on their faces as their bodies were also bounced back. On a tree trunk not far away, Orange Bar, who was watching Ivanli and Julie's pincer attack being neutralized, bit his lip. With its chi sound, the iron chain in his hand turned into a black shadow and shot toward Noah's direction. Bang! However, almost at the same time, in the midst of a loud gunshot, a pitch-black bullet pierced through the air and heavily collided with the water droplets at the tip of the iron chain. Clang! The pitch-black bullet and the water droplets with the iron chain bounced off each other in the midst of the sound of collision. Wah! On the tree trunk, Orange Bar sucked in a breath of cold air. Ha! At this time, Ivan and Julie, who had stabilized their retreating figures, once again charged forward. Holding their own blaze, they let out a shout. Their katana and fragmented blade emitted a cold aura as they waved their swords in the air, covering Noah's direction. Noah, who was standing still, had a flash of light in his eyes. He held the revolver tightly, and the body of the revolver danced out at an extremely fast speed. It once again turned into a circle of pitch-black arcs, and fiercely collided with the continuous sword curtain created by the katana and katana. Bang! The continuous sword curtain was suddenly directly dispersed by the pitch-black arc that violently expanded. Dong! The shockwave spread out, and Evanley and Julie, who were at the center of the shockwave, were shocked by the sudden burst of power from the katana and katana in their hands, causing them to take 2 steps back. 1 against 3. Moreover, the 3 people he was fighting against were all first-year students who had outstanding battle prowess and were even among the best. Noah still didn't show any signs of being defeated. After 2 weeks, Evanley, Julie, and Orange Bar finally saw with their own eyes how strong Noah was when he used the strength of a normal person to defeat a rank 3 school teacher. What's wrong? Noah, who was holding a revolver named Blaze, didn't point the gun at the 3 girls. Instead, he let out a provocative laugh. Is this the end? Ivan and Julie, who had retreated to a distance of 10 meters away from Noah, panted heavily. However, they still pointed their blaze at Noah from afar. It's not going to end so easily. Orange Bar was the one who shouted this. Yeah. As if in response to Orange Bar's call, a rumbling sound suddenly rang out beside Noah. Bang! A huge tree was smashed to pieces. Behind the huge tree, the figure that rushed out from the scattered pieces of wood was the girl with a weak personality but a beautiful figure. If someone were to see her right now, they would definitely not believe that she was the girl who had fainted during the physical enhancement class. Because, at this very moment, this delicate girl was holding a huge assault spear in her hand, the cavalry spear. As its name suggested, it was a spear that was supposed to be used by knights on horseback. However, right now, Ye had used her super-enhanced arm strength as a surpasser to hold it tightly and charge forward. Ye had once said that if she wanted to use her blaze, it would require a lot of stamina. It was precisely because Ye's blaze was such a huge cavalry spear that she needed to quickly increase her stamina, otherwise, she wouldn't be able to use it at all. And now, the girl's hard work over this period of time had indeed turned into the power of the blaze in her hand. Against the terrifying oppressive wind that made people's ears ring, it directly charged forward and violently rushed in front of Noah. His gaze focused, Noah suddenly raised the revolver in his hand, and very accurately blocked the tip of the cavalry spear that was suddenly thrusting towards him. In the next second, the crazily thrusting cavalry spear violently stabbed into the body of the revolver that was blocking. Clang! A violent and crisp sound of collision rang out, and the impact turned into a storm with irresistible force, cutting through the ground and attacking in all directions. Screech! Amidst the shrill sound that made people want to cover their ears, the impact also madly flashed from the body of the revolver and the tip of the cavalry spear that came into contact with each other. Noah's expression changed for the first time. From the revolver, a wave of violent energy that made people unable to help but suspect passed through the body of the revolver and attacked Noah's body, causing Noah's arm to feel a little numb. Whoa whoa whoa! Ye struggled to stand still, and used all her strength to push the cavalry spear in her hand. She closed her eyes tightly, and poured all her strength into this attack, venting it on Noah's body. The body of the revolver let out a creaking sound. Her feet were slightly lifted off the ground because of the pressure. Gotcha! The ground that Noah stepped on cracked with a sound that made people's scalp numb. The hand holding the spear gradually lost feeling, and Noah's gaze towards the charging Ya also changed. Chapter 2:16. Who? A gentle breeze blew through the forest, the air, and the open space that had become full of potholes. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar, who were in a triangular formation, each held their own blaze. They looked at the center of the field and fell into a state of speechlessness. In the center of the field, Ya, who was holding a huge cavalry spear, sat on the ground and panted heavily. His face was slightly pale, and he looked like he was about to be burned out. Needless to say, Ya's physical strength had been greatly consumed by using the huge cavalry spear. He was now at the point where he could not stand up. Noah stood in front of Ya, holding the revolver blaze in his hand. He then looked at his hand that had become numb from blocking Ya's attack. It was even slightly trembling. After a while, he suddenly laughed. Isn't this quite powerful? Ya, who was panting heavily, looked at Noah in a daze. Although it has a weakness that requires a large amount of stamina to use, once you have sufficient stamina and arm strength to wield it, in terms of strength, your blaze is very likely to be the strongest amongst all the blaze. Noah extended his hand which had just stopped trembling in front of Ya. With such a powerful blaze, you still say that you are useless. You will be punished by the heavens. Ya stared blankly at the gentle smile on Noah's face that could not be stopped. Hearing Noah's words that sounded like he agreed with her, Ya's charming face turned slightly red. Her heartbeat also rapidly accelerated. She involuntarily reached out her hand and placed it on Noah's hand. Noah pulled slightly and pulled Ya up. Continue to work hard. Holding Ya's soft little hand, Noah said this sentence from the bottom of his heart. Otherwise, even the soul in your hand will not be able to stand it. Ya lightly nodded her head, then immediately nodded with force. I will work hard. Noah suddenly smiled. Seeing that the tense atmosphere from before had completely dissipated due to Noah and Ya's inexplicably warm conversation, Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar each showed different expressions. Ivanli let out a long sigh and narrowed his eyes. Julie's hand that was holding the sword lowered. Her deep red eyes revealed an envious expression. As for Orange Bar, she stared straight at Noah and Ya's tightly held hands. Her charming face, like her tripping double blade, also slightly blushed, and she deliberately coughed. That, from all aspects, young men and women should not hold hands so intimately. It's about time to let go, right? Only then did Noah and Ya react. They quickly let go of their hands at the same time and even put some distance between them. It's done. Noah adjusted his emotions, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He held the revolver and twirled it around. Do you want to continue fighting? Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Ya looked at each other. Just as Ivanli and Orange Bar took a step forward and were about to say something to Noah, an extremely shrill scream resounded through the entire forest. The four girls present immediately felt their chests tighten, and their charming faces suddenly changed color. What? Ya, who was the most timid, had already hidden behind Orange Bar. What was that sound just now? Was someone defeated? Ivanli's face was also filled with shock. But, that sound is too tragic. That did not sound like the cry of someone who was defeated in a normal battle. That cry was like the cry of someone who was on the verge of death. It contained indelible pain. Noah raised his head and closed his eyes. After sensing for a while, he suddenly opened them and looked in a direction not far away. Immediately, Noah crouched, and his body rushed forward like a cheetah. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the forest. Noah. Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, and Ya called out at the same time, and immediately chased after him without hesitation. Noah, who was rushing forward, tightly held the revolver in his hand, and his eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. Noah was certain that the scream just now was not as simple as being attacked by the soul-damaging blaze. Indeed, when being attacked by the blaze, the person who was hit would feel pain for a moment, but that was only for a moment, and it was a very small feeling. Otherwise, Noah would not have used his hands to block Ivanley and Julie's blaze. Thus, Noah, who had personally experienced the effects of the blaze, could confirm that although the feeling of being hit by the blaze was very uncomfortable, it was only uncomfortable. It was not to the extent that it would cause one to scream so miserably. In that case, what was the shriek just now? With this question in mind, Noah increased his speed, and not long after, the scene before him suddenly opened up. A square with a fountain in the middle appeared in front of Noah. And in the middle of the square, several people stood there. First, there were 2 students wearing the school's uniform. The tall and short figures were Kyujuju Totoro and Oki Totoro, whom Noah recognized. However, at this time, Oki Totoro was lying on the ground with wounds all over her body, and blood was still flowing out from her wounds. Kyujuju Totoro hugged Oki Totoro, and his face was filled with anger as he looked in front of him. In front of Kyujuju Totoro, a figure stood there. It was the figure of a girl wearing a maid outfit with rabbit ears on her head. Impressively, it was Teacher Little Rabbit. However, what made Noah's eyes constrict was that the usually cute and spoiled Teacher Little Rabbit was actually holding a huge sword in her hand. The blade was full of sawtooth, and at a glance, one could tell that the sword had amazing lethality, Fong sword. Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped. Teacher Little Rabbit, who was holding the Fong sword in her hand, seemed to have heard a strange sound. She turned around and looked in the direction of Noah. When she saw that it was Noah, her eyes lit up, and her face was filled with excitement as she shouted. "Wow! I finally found you! My dear exception!" The voice was still the same voice that was filled with innocence. The tone was still the same sweet and spoiled tone. However, at this moment, Teacher Little Rabbit no longer gave off the feeling of being harmless. Instead, she was like the Fong sword in her hand, emitting a terrifying aura that made people's hair stand on end. Noah was familiar with this aura. It was called Murderous Aura. Hey, can you wait for me over there for a while?" Teacher Little Rabbit first smiled sweetly, and then her temperament suddenly changed, and the expression on her face became ferocious. "Wait until I get rid of this guy who is in the way first." With a completely different rough tone compared to before, Teacher Little Rabbit raised the Fong sword in her hand and fiercely slashed at Oki Totoro, who was covered in wounds. Blaze! At this moment, Ninefold Totoro, who was holding Oki Totoro tightly, shouted angrily. Bang! Scorching flames and gorgeous star patterns appeared at the same time, covering Ninefold Totoro's body. Then, the Fong sword that suddenly fell heavily collided with a heavy piece of iron that protruded from the flames. Clang! In the sound of metal colliding, the flames were cut open by the Fong sword, and the scene inside was exposed to the air. The scene that appeared in front of him made Noah completely stunned, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. He saw that on Ninefold Totoro's arm that was tightly protecting Oki Totoro, there was a piece of iron that looked like a beast's claw on it. Ninefold Totoro lifted it up and blocked the Fong sword that was coming down. A piece of iron that looked like a beast's claw, a shield. In the case where a blaze could only materialize as a weapon, it was absolutely impossible for a blaze to appear as a defensive tool. That was Ninefold Totoro's blaze. Ha 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 ha. Teacher Little Rabbit let out a fanatical laugh. You finally took it out. Ability. Noah, who had a blaze that shouldn't be a complicated revolver, was an exception. Ninefold Totoro, who had shield that shouldn't be a defensive tool, was an ability. The two of them were of the same kind. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.